Chapter 1. Still leaving? Yuan Wan opened her eyes. She was faced with a pair of eyes that sent chills down her spine and made her soul quiver. Her pale fingers tightly twisted the duvet. Again, she had to endure the pain of her body being torn apart. Could this be hell? Why is it that I'm obviously dead but had to come back here, next to this devil? Her mind was muddled due to this man's scorching temperature, and out of instinct, she resisted. Don't touch me. With one fluid movement, it was as if she was touched by ice. His ghostly, bloodthirsty expression clouded, and his ice-cold lips bit down on her ruthlessly, as if wanting to swallow her whole. Yuan Wan was in such pain that she couldn't think straight. She muttered subconsciously, "Why? Why me? Han, why must it be me?" "Because it has to be you." Hearing his deep and hoarse voice was like a shackle of chains that imprisoned her soul. Upon hearing the same answer he'd given her in her previous life, Yuan Wan fell into a coma. When she opened her eyes again, the darkness of the night sky had turned into daylight. A floral scent filled the air, and the warm glow of the sun filtered in, momentarily dissipating her uneasiness. Yet, in the next second, Yuan Wan tensed up again. A strong sense of distress spread in her as the man awakened. His arm around her waist tightened. She was akin to a pillow, being held in his arms. Still leaving? Next to her ears whispered the voice that gave her the creeps. Out of her survival instincts, Yuan Wan shook her head. She was unsure whether he believed her. He glanced at her for a moment and then looked down, giving her little kisses on her lips, chin, and neck. The heavy, hot breath buried in her neck gave her warning signs all over her body. She was like a deer who'd been bitten by a predator. She didn't dare move an inch. After what seemed like forever, he finally let her loose. In the next second, a surprisingly pleasant sight fell into Yuan Wan's view. He left the bed half-naked, the backlight outlining his slender stature and tapered waist. However, this view lasted only for a moment, as he swiftly picked up his clothes by the bed and buttoned his shirt all the way to the top meticulously. It was only a while ago that he'd been as ferocious as a beast, but in this moment, his handsome face was cold without a trace of humanity. It wasn't until she heard the sound of the door shutting that Yuan Wan allowed her nerves to relax. She could finally reflect on her current situation. She slowly glanced at the furnishings around her, and also at her own reflection in the vanity mirror opposite. The black lips of the girl in the mirror had been gnawed at till there was only a faint color left, and the makeup on her face had been completely smeared by tears and sweat. On her body, filled with bruises and hickeys, was a horrific and bloody tattoo. She couldn't believe this was how she looked at only 20 years old. At that time, in order to distance herself from Han, she purposely made herself look ugly and disgusting. Now she'd actually been reborn. Suddenly, an overwhelming sense of fear and despair caused her to choke. Why? Why have I returned to 7 years in the past? I'd rather die than return here, back by this devil's side. She clearly remembered that this was where she and Han first had sex, and she'd been tormented thoroughly for countless nights afterwards. She'd lost her lover, her family, even her dignity and freedom. She'd lost everything. Must I go through all of it again? No. Since God's given me a chance to live again, I have to change it all. Chapter 2. He could tolerate it all, but how am I going to change? To Han, crushing her was easier than crushing an ant. He got whatever he wanted. Yuan Wan took a deep breath, forcing the fear of that man out of her. There must be a way. At least she was no longer the same stupid, mindless, and impulsive teenager. Oh my God. Wan. She heard a sudden exclamation. Hearing this familiar voice, Yuan stiffened and turned to look at the door. Immediately, she saw the face of a person she'd never forget. A pretty face that people would never suspect. It was her best friend from her previous life. Wan, how could Mr. C do this to you? Shinmengqi rushed over and held her hand. She looked at the messy bed and Wan's bruised body in astonishment. Yuan lowered her eyes, looking at her hand clenched in pain from Shinmengqi's tight grip. This time, she didn't miss Shinmengqi's clumsily hidden feelings of jealousy. Wan, are you all right? Are you okay? Wanwan, don't scare me. Shinmingchi fretted anxiously. She saw that Wanwan's gaze was strange and wondered if she was traumatized. Yi Wanwan maintained her composure and drew her hands back. She shook her head and replied, I'm fine. In her past life, the reason why she'd been tormented so relentlessly by Si Yihan was due in part to Shinmengqi. She had many fights with Si Yihan and didn't dare tell anyone other than Shinmengqi, her most trusted friend. Who would have known? Shinmengqi actually had feelings for Si Yihan. She long coveted the title of Mrs. Si. On the surface, she was helping Wanwan, but she was actually using her to get closer to Si Yihan. She even tried to drive a wedge between them countless times and led Wanwan to be tortured by the wrath of Si Yihan each time. Wanwan hadn't noticed her level of deception before. She even felt deeply grateful to Shinmengqi for being her wingwoman. Staring at her own reflection in the mirror, Yi Wanwan couldn't help but smile wryly. Actually, this hideous disguise was Shinmengqi's idea, and she actually agreed. No matter how others saw her, as long as Si Yihan loathed her, it'd be worth it. But what she hadn't anticipated was that despite her revolting appearance, Si Yihan could tolerate all of it. How are all right when you look like this? Wanwan, don't worry, I'll help you, Shinmengqi said, with a look of kindness. Yi Wanwan sneered in her heart. Oh sure. The Shinmengqi from her previous life had also been like this, generously offering to help her escape and asking for Gu Yueza's help. In the end, Shinmengqi betrayed her and told Si Yihan that she was eloping with Gu Yueza. This had intensified her conflict with Si Yihan. From that point onwards, Si Yihan's temperament became cranky and unpredictable. His possessiveness towards her became intolerable. Facing Si Yihan head-on was like courting death. Why had she been so foolishly stubborn before? She'd even listened to Shinmengqi and obeyed her, hurting herself again and again. The Yi family hadn't exacted their revenge yet. Her parents were still waiting for her at home, and she still had to guide her older brother onto the right path. She had so much to do. She needed to pacify Si Yihan first. She couldn't do anything that would provoke him again. She set herself up against a terrifying enemy. Wanwan, wait for me. I'll come back for you. Shinmengqi, only caring for herself, spoke words devoid of meaning. She then left. Once Shinmengqi left, Yi Wanwan's helpless and fragile expression turned cold and numb. Shinmengqi's countless attempts to encourage her to escape hadn't succeeded. The last time, she was accused of having an affair. It was like Shinmengqi was determined to the death to ruin her life. So let's find out. Who will die this time? Chapter 3. Ex-fiancé in the blink of an eye. 3 days passed. In those 3 days, Yi Wanwan spent her time mostly sleeping and reflecting on her memory of her previous life. Si Yihan was no different from the past. For 3 whole days, he didn't appear at all. The servants at the house were all buried in their work and rarely spoke to her. They didn't even dare to make any eye contact. Such an enormous house, but it was like a crypt. Yi Wanwan changed into her pajamas and looked at the time. She immediately walked towards the yard. The moonlight was beautiful with a gentle breeze, easing her fear of the terrifying memories of the cage she was trapped in. This garden actually had a nice view. After all, it had been designed by Si Yihan himself. He hired the world's top group of architects, and it took 5 full years to finish building it in the top location in Imperial City. It was such a pity that in her previous life, she hadn't appreciated it. She abhorred this cage that imprisoned her and only wanted to destroy it. In plain sight, she could see a large, burnt patch of grass, an intentionally cut flower bed, and a murky pond. These were all her masterpieces. Wanwan then. A familiar voice abruptly resounded in the evening wind. Yi Wanwan looked up from a withered rose in the direction of the voice. Under the dim light, she could see a man dressed in an expensive and luxurious suit. He was charming and classy. She had to admit, Gu Yuze did in fact captivate her. Si Yihan, that devil, paled in comparison with him. Gu Yuze stood a few steps away from her and frowned. Yi Wanwan noticed his subtle reaction, so she took a look at her clothes. At that moment, she was still in her heavy metal clothes, with a thick mess of makeup on her face. As her wardrobe didn't have any regular clothes, She thought she might as well maintain her old image. She also didn't want to arouse suspicion by changing drastically in such a short period of time. Gu Yuze stared at her coldly, his expression filled with disappointment. Wan, how could you degrade yourself like this? Degrade myself? Yi Wan tasted these words, mocking her. In her previous life, she'd given him her entire heart. In order to prove her loyalty to him, she'd made herself dress so strangely and repulsively. But in the end, all she got in return was him saying that she degraded herself. She knew that Shen Mingqi spoke ill of her in front of Gu Yuze, but if this man had the slightest affection for her, he wouldn't believe anything Shen Mingqi said. Since Shen Mingqi was her best friend, she came over often to keep her company. Thus, she could come in and out as she pleased. She even allowed Gu Yuze in secretly. Just as Yi Wan was about to speak, a chill went up her spine. Si Han, he's here. She was instinctively aware of that man's presence. In her previous life, she didn't realize Shen Mingqi betrayed her. Si Han watched her in the dark the whole time she cheated on him, marking the beginning of her nightmare. Yi Wan sighed gently, forcing herself to ignore the presence of Si Han. She looked at Gu Yuze indifferently, chuckled and asked, I wonder which perspective you're questioning me from? That of my ex-fiancé? Or my brother-in-law? Gu Yuze's expression turned heavy at Yi Wan's sarcasm. Wan, I know you blame me, but I was also helpless. Whatever happened, I'm responsible for what you've become today. Leave with me now, and I'll take you out of Imperial City. Chapter 4. Dying under a peony in her previous life. Yi Wan felt that she lost herself and let Gu Yuze down. She didn't even fight back when he said all those nasty words to her. She was moved when he said she was forgiven and was touched that he wanted to bring her home, thinking she was still in his heart. She had simply been dumb. Who knew he was just acting out of pride? In any case, she was once Gu Yuze's fiancée, but now she'd become Si Han's lover. If people found out, wouldn't he lose all his pride? Just as Gu Yuze appealed for her to leave with him, Yi Wan felt a drastic drop in the temperature of the surrounding air. In the darkness, only a few steps away from Yi Wan, the man's expression was as dark as the night. His hostility raged uncontrollably, as if he could crush a man and engulf him whole, not leaving a single trace behind. Si Han's assistant, Su Yi, was sweating buckets and both legs were trembling. What a life I have to witness the boss woman eloping with another man late at night. Ever since this woman Yi Wan had appeared, the servants hadn't had an easy day. Once the boss went into a rage, they all suffered. And this woman's forte was provoking Si Han. This time, boss anger would certainly be enough to burn the entirety of Imperial City to ashes. Sui closed his eyes in despair. He knew even without looking what was coming. Seeing that Yi Wan wasn't moving, Gu Yuze got impatient. He reached out to grab her arm, wanting to pull her away. But Yi Wan quickly took a step back, avoiding his touch. Wan. Gu Yuze frowned. Yi Wan replied coldly, Gu Yuze, did I say I wanted to leave with you? Gu Yuze gave her a pitiful gaze. Wan, Si Han is toying with you. Why must you humiliate yourself just to get back at me? The Yi Wan he knew was head over heels for him, and always did his bidding. Thus, Gu Yuze thought she was just trying to seek his attention. Humiliate myself? Yi Wan laughed like she just heard a joke. She sneered, Si Han is richer than you, more powerful than you, of a higher class than you, and has a better body than you. Sleeping with him once is better than being with you for a lifetime. How do you have the confidence to say such things? You, Gu Yuze never imagined that Yi Wan would say those words. His mood darkened. At the same time, the man in the darkness with rage like a beast suddenly calmed down. Sui was surprised and looked in Yi Wan's direction. Why is Miss Yi acting so strangely today? This is out of character. Isn't she deeply in love with Gu Yuze? She should be happy to elope with him. Maybe she's playing hard to get? This time, Gu Yuze was really angry. He warned her, Wan, stop throwing a tantrum. Si Han is a vicious, violent, and bloodthirsty man. Do you know how many have died in his hands? Staying with a man like him, don't you care for your life? In response to Gu Yuze's harsh warning, Yi Wan yawned lazily. She glanced at him sideways and replied faintly, "So what? Dying under a peony flower such as Han. You'd be happy even as a ghost." Chapter 5. An acquired taste. Sui in hiding. Pio. Peony flower. Damn. This woman is so different today. Is she under a spell? How can she compare our boss to a peony? Boss is handsome, even speaking as a guy. But even though he's really good looking, anyone who knows him well enough knows how violent he is. Sui discreetly sneaked glances at his boss, but unfortunately couldn't make out his emotions from those dark eyes. Is boss angry or not? At this moment, Guyuze looked at the girl who stood in front of him. A girl who was filled with hatred and spoke so viciously. He warned her with the last bit of his patience. Fine, fine. Since you won't come to your senses, next time you have regrets, don't blame me for not coming to you today. Yuan, I've done my best to help you. Yuan relaxed a little when Guyuze finally stormed off. If she had been in her previous life, she'd have to face the wrath of Han. However, she managed to change the course of her life this time, since Guyuze had left while Han. She wasn't sure when his presence had disappeared. Did I pass the test? Han's temperament was treacherous and unpredictable, so Yuan didn't dare let her guard down. After easing her mood, she walked back into the house. Once she stepped into the living room, that familiar voice penetrated into every pore of her body. Come here. On the sofa, the man's open gaze was like a net, spread wide for her. Yuan stood rooted to the ground. Even though she'd been reborn, her fear for this man was still buried deep in her bones and would never go away. But if she wanted to change her fate, she had to overcome this fear. Yuan dug her nails into her palms to maintain her composure and slowly walked towards him. As she came closer, she was swept onto the man's lap in a swift second, followed by a sudden pain on her lips. The thin, cold lips pressed down hard against hers and nibbled, not missing an inch. Yuan didn't move. She forced herself not to resist in order to prevent infuriating him. She couldn't help but think that the lipstick that she'd put on today was wilder than before. She looked as if she'd been poisoned. Didn't the color hurt his eyes? How could he kiss her so passionately? She met Han when she was 18. For 2 whole years, she disguised herself with many different personas, thinking that there must be one that would be revolting to him. She wouldn't have tortured herself to look like this if she'd known better. After that thought, Yuan suddenly came around. She was actually daydreaming in the arms of Han. Once she came around, she was surprised to feel a weight on her neck. Han was hugging her like a pillow and resting his head on her neck. His breath was hot against her neck, coming in long and steady rhythms. He fell asleep. How could that be? Yuan didn't dare make a sound until half an hour later when Han was still without movement. She whispered, Han? He didn't react. He was really asleep. Not far off, the worried Sui stood by the gate. He witnessed what had happened and was surprised too. His eyes were wide open like he'd seen something unbelievable. Yuan was astonished as well. She clearly remembered that Han had a serious case of insomnia. His body was also more resistant to drugs than ordinary people, so meds weren't effective on him. Each time he wanted to go to bed, he needed a professional psychologist to perform hypnotism. Worst of all, aside from being abnormal, he had a strong psychological barrier too. So, it was extremely hard for him to be hypnotized. When he was in a bad mood, hypnotism was totally useless. The C family hired an innumerable number of well-known doctors for him, but there was no cure. Chapter 6. Be herself again. Yuan saw Sui's look of surprise. She opened her mouth to talk, but Sui quickly put a finger to his lips to silence her. He then put his palms together to plead her and mouthed, "The 9th master hasn't slept for 3 days." Hadn't slept for 3 days? Could this be because of her running away? In the past 2 years, she hadn't given up on running away. This time had been her closest to freedom. Just a little more, and she would have been able to get on that overseas cruise. But there was a high price to pay. Before, although Han forced her to stay by his side, he had never touched her. The first time he did was 3 days ago. This was why she had believed her disguise to be effective all along. Just when Sui heaved a sigh of relief, a thunderous ring from the phone resounded throughout the living room, disturbing the silence. Sui was scared out of his wits and nearly tossed the phone away. He quickly turned it off, but it was too late. The devil had been awoken. It slowly opened its eyes, not showing a trace of humanity. It looked towards him with eyes that shot daggers, and the color in Suyi's body drained. Yi Wanwan was also in a state of shock. Si Han had a horrendous temper whenever he woke up. If he was disturbed during his sleep, that was akin to the end of the world. Panicking, Yi Wanwan stretched out her hands. She covered Si Han's eyes with one hand and tugged his head against her shoulders with the other, whilst caressing his soft hair with her fingers. "It's okay. Go to sleep." 1 second went by. 2 seconds went by. 3 seconds went by. Si Han did not move. A while later, Yi Wanwan carefully removed the hand covering Si Han's eyes. The man had shut his eyes quietly and had fallen into a deep sleep again. Suyi's blood finally started flowing. He had nearly collapsed just now. He looked at Yi Wanwan with eyes of gratitude. Yi Wanwan stayed in the same position the entire night. Unsure of when she fell asleep, when she awoke, it was already morning. She was lying on the big bed in the master bedroom, with no sign of Si Han in the house. Yi Wanwan rubbed her eyes and sat up. The hand she rubbed her eyes with was smeared with eyeliner, fake eyelashes, and glitter eyeshadow. Every girl wants to look beautiful and would know that sleeping with makeup on damages the skin. But for these past 2 years, she never dared to remove her makeup even before going to bed. Conversely, now that she knew that her disguise wasn't working, she felt a little freer. She could finally be herself again. Ever since she was 18, a flower-blossoming age for girls, she had never met anyone without her disguise. She had almost forgotten how she looked like without it. Firstly, would be the big, bloody, horrific tattoos on her body. Fortunately, she was afraid of pain, so she didn't listen to Shen Mengqi's advice to get permanent tattoos. The ones on her body could be washed off with soap. Yi Wanwan searched high and low and finally found the soap in a box filled with various other things. She brought the detergent, makeup remover, cotton pads, and a pack of facial masks that Si Han had given her previously in the bathroom. She first removed the numerous ear studs and heavy gold earrings, then the dog chain around her neck. Next, she removed her makeup. Finally, she poured the soap into the bathtub and soaked her entire body in it. Chapter 7. What did you do last night? With the help of the soap, the tattoos on her body started to slowly dissolve away. Yi Wanwan soaked herself in the warm water, placed a facial mask over her face, and shut her eyes for a bit. When she opened them again, the water in the bathtub had turned black and muddy. As for her body, without the masking effect of the tattoos, her body revealed its original state. The kind of temporary tattoos she had gotten hadn't damaged her skin. Other than the red crescent-shaped birthmark, her entire body was flawless, just like a piece of jade. Moist and delicate, it was also like snow under the moonlight, white and clear. Before being reborn, she even went to get a permanent tattoo on impulse. This tattoo stuck with her for 7 whole years. So for these 7 years, she had no clue how her body looked like underneath. Now that she had seen its original state, even she herself was shocked at how good her skin was. In addition, she was currently only 20 years old, the age where a girl's complexion is at its best. After peeling the mask off her face, Yi Wanwan drained the murky water in the bathtub and washed her body again. She then changed into a bathrobe and sat in front of the dresser. The girl in the mirror had ashy brows, a high nose, and delicate lips in a nice natural shade, just like beautiful cherry blossoms in March. The most amazing feature was her pair of eyes, just like an autumn lake, shimmering like stars. Due to her long-term heavy use of makeup, her skin was dry and damaged. But the moisturizing facial mask helped her regain skin as youthful as her body. However, Yi Wanwan knew that this was only temporary. Just like all the other beauty procedures, the facial mask could only maintain the skin's condition for a short period, especially those emergency-type facial masks that don't cure the root of the problem but rather offer a temporary solution. For the skin on her face to completely recover, it still needed more care. The outrageous hairdo she did at the hair salon also returned to its original state after washing. Her long hair that reached her waist was as black as ink and was let down loosely. Previously, she snipped off her long hair that was so precious to her, but now that she had it all back, Yuan was so glad she gained back what she had lost. Slowly, she took the wooden comb and combed through the hair she adored. After drying her hair, Yuan looked at the wardrobe filled with strange clothes and began worrying again. Forget it. I'll head to the cloakroom at level 3 and get a set. It's such a rare chance to be reborn, so why should I make myself uncomfortable? The entire third story was a cloakroom. Inside, there were people that Ce Han had hired to help her with her wardrobe, accessories, and bags. Although she had never touched any of these items, for 7 years, the items in that cloakroom were always on trend. Downstairs, in front of the dining table, Ce Han was sipping his coffee leisurely. Due to the lack of sleep, the dark eye circles around the man's eyes were a lot darker. His flawless face looked as if he had sucked the essence of a demon, just lacking the light emitting out of his body. Ah, see. Hot, hot, hot. Lin Ke was stunned at what he saw and got scalded by the hot piping coffee. Ce Hans turned to look skeptically at his good friend sitting opposite, who was obviously astonished. Lin Ke still felt that even when this guy made sarcastic remarks at him, he was still very good-looking. Lin Ke slammed the coffee he was holding onto the table. Curses? Ninth C. Be truthful. What did you do last night? Were you reducing Een and nourishing Yang? Chapter 8. Stepped over by her, Ce Han seemed to be in a good mood since he didn't turn hostile after what Lin Ke said. Lin Ke cast an eye at his brother with a look that could split the heavens. With an expression of bitter hatred and resentment, he said, Ninth brother, with your status, stature, looks and body, have you thought about what kind of woman you want? Why must you degrade yourself like that? Yuan heard the words of Lin Ke while making her way down. Why did what Lin Ke said sound so familiar? It's fine if you're curious and want to have a taste of something different, but it has been 2 years. As your brother, I can't tolerate it anymore. Lin Ke was still nagging at his brother when the listless and inattentive Ce Han suddenly tilted his head slightly and directed his gaze upstairs. Lin Ke subconsciously followed Ce Han's gaze and looked over. Immediately, their eyes sparkled with astonishment. They could see a girl standing upstairs. A girl in a pure white dress, with a slim body. She had long hair reaching her waist. Her glances were enticing and her lips were like peaches. She was a real beauty with flesh of ice and bones of jade. Her beauty was out of this world. This girl was really, unbelievably gorgeous. The light could not be shielded even from a beast like Ce Han. Lin Ke was still dumbfounded by the time Yuan walked over to the dining table. Yuan scanned the dining table. Normally, she always sat in the seat furthest away from Ce Han. This time, she thought carefully and took the seat next to him instead. Seeing that the girl had actually sat next to him, Ce Han looked at her with a twinkle in his eyes. Abiding by the principle of, the lesser you talk, the lesser mistakes you will make, Yuan sat down and started eating her breakfast silently. From the moment she woke up, she had received stares. She was also quite uncomfortable with the sudden transformation back to her usual self. She wondered what Ce Han thought about it. Anyway, since he didn't even mind her horrendous appearance, why not doll up and make herself feel good? Yuan thought to herself and ate her porridge at ease. All of a sudden, a slender finger reached towards her face. Yuan tensed up and her whole body froze. Then, that finger gathered a wisp of hair that nearly fell into the porridge and swept it behind her ear. Now, Ce Han leaned on the chair lazily. Once he was done rearranging the girl's hair, he slowly retracted his arm with his gaze fixed on her. With a curious and unperceivable passion, his eyes slowly inspected every inch of the girl's skin and expression. Yuan heaved a sigh of relief and quickly used a hand to hold up her hair, preventing it from falling again. At this moment, Lin Ke finally came around and gasped excitedly, Ninth brother, you have finally thought it through. You should have found someone like that before. Why would you allow that woman to step over you? Yuan, step over. Lin Ke also said, oh right, where's that ugly woman? Have you chased her out? Yuan, ugly woman, Lin Ke said. Although that Yuanwan didn't look so bad 2 years ago when you guys just started, she was fat. She was at least 150 pounds. Yuanwan. Nonsense. I was obviously 140. Even though I was greedy and gained tremendous weight during my teens, my weight has never exceeded 150, okay? Lin K, ninth brother, I didn't understand what you saw in her. Why would you fall in love with a fatty? Yuanwan, fatty. Yuanwan couldn't take it anymore. No woman can tolerate being called fat. Smack Yuanwan suddenly slammed down the chopsticks that were in her hand, her eyes sending daggers across to Lin K. Lin K. So what if I was 150 pounds? So what if I'm fat? It's not like I've eaten your rice. Chapter 9. You're a fool. Hearing this familiar voice, Lin K's face looked like he saw a ghost. He stood up quickly and knocked his chair over. Yuwa. Yi. Yi Wan Wan. How could it be? You got plastic surgery? Lin K gaped at her in surprise. But that's not right either. How could the procedure be so quick? She still looked horrendous when he last saw her a few days back. Yi Wan Wan exploded in anger. You're the one that went for plastic surgery. I have always looked this way. Also, tell me clearly, how am I fat? A trance-like look appeared on Si Han's listless face. The girl looked as if there was a fire in her eyes. A long time since they were so intense. The raging Yi Wan Wan suddenly felt a cool palm stroking her head, like someone trying to tame an angry beast. At the same time, a warm voice went through her ears. You're not fat. Yi Wan Wan was taken aback and looked at Si Han. Had she lost her mind? How could she find Si Han? Gentle? Yi Wan Wan stopped her train of thought and realized that she was overly agitated. I'm not fat at all now, she said, embarrassed. Si Han said, you weren't fat before either. Lin K turned serious. Ninth brother. Say that again with your conscience. Yi Wan Wan gritted her teeth in rage. Si Han turned to look at Lin K slowly. I have given that piece of land in Chengdong to Xie Zhizhi. Lin K was suddenly dumbfounded. What? Don't joke about this, ninth brother. Didn't you promise to give it to me? Have you already given it to Xie Zhizhi? Or did you just decide to give it to Xie Zhizhi in that 1 second? Si Han. I just decided. Lin K. Damn. Just because I called you Wan Wan fat just now? You're a fool. Lin K retorted. Not only did Si Han not refute, he enjoyed this title. With an expressionless face, he said, you're in the way, you should leave now. Not only was he foolish, he's even biased towards his lover and finds his own brother a nuisance. Lin K's heart broke and he ran off in tears. After Lin K left, Yuan Wan and Si Han were left alone in the dining room. With Lin K around, Yuan Wan breathed easy, but once he left, she tensed up again. The presence of the man was instantly magnified. Eat more. Her plate had another xiaolong bao from her favorite breakfast store. Yuan Wan had conflicting emotions. Ever since she appeared, Si Han did not have any special reaction to her change in appearance at all. It was more normal to react like Lin K, right? Yuan Wan couldn't hold it in and asked, Si Han, don't you find anything different about me today? Si Han placed a prawn dumpling on her plate. What? Yuan Wan. My looks. Si Han furrowed his brows. What's the difference? Yuan Wan was stunned. Is this man blind? He looked at her unbelievable expression and gave a little laugh. He cupped her delicate chin, ran his finger over her lips and said in a deep romantic voice, still look as delicious. Yuan Wan, look as delicious? He actually finds my previous horrendous look delicious? And it isn't any different from how I look now? Yuan Wan was in shock by his perverted taste. Chapter 10. Make up for the ugliness, so to speak. She had tormented herself all these years for nothing? Yuan Wan felt like dying. Thankfully this time, she found out sooner rather than later, or she would have to be ugly again her whole life. Starting today, she wanted to doll herself up as pretty as possible to make up for the ugliness in her previous life. Why? Is there a problem? No. Yuan Wan replied, aggrieved. Oh, the man chuckled. Yuan Wan looked at the man, fearful. The unusual spark on his face was neither ghastly, violent, nor detached. Han was actually laughing. She realized just now that this man seemed to be in a very good mood today. Was it because he had a good sleep last night? Actually, Han's hot-tempered temperament was closely related to his insomnia. Nobody is able to tolerate such a long-term sleeping disorder. As she thought about it, Wan's mind started to wander. Should I take this chance to bring up that issue, since he's in a good mood today? When she was downstairs, she received a message from the class monitor asking her to go to school. If she continued to miss school, she might be punished or expelled. Due to her bad results, she had already been held back 2 years and would be 20 years old by senior year. She remembered that during her previous life, she was only concerned about one thing every day, which was Guyu Zhe. Before meeting Han, she was obsessed with Guyu Zhe. After meeting Han, she kept thinking about escaping back to Guyu Zhe's side. She was totally disinterested in learning. Soon after, she didn't bother attending school and didn't make it for the college entrance exam. Her studies were completely delayed. This time, she wouldn't allow herself to destroy her life like she did before. This time, although she was grounded due to her escape attempt like her previous life, this time she didn't leave with Guyu Zhe. Thus her relationship with Han was still redeemable, and there was still room for mitigation. Wan took a deep breath and asked hesitantly, "May I go to school tomorrow?" As soon as her voice died down, the pressure in the house lowered and the man regained his indifferent expression. Wan could hear her own heartbeat. "I'm still not allowed to go to school?" Even though she expected it not to be that easy, Wan couldn't help but feel disappointed. Her face turned grim as she looked at her favorite bun with no appetite and muttered softly, "If it's not possible, then forget it." But Han's face didn't look any happier. Instead, he looked more sullen. Wan didn't want to aggravate him right after their relationship improved, so she quickly said, "I was just casually asking. I'm not going anymore." Han kept silent and looked at the girl's dull eyes with a panicked expression on her face. Looking at the girl's expression reminded him how it was last time, and an uncontrollable temper rose in him. Wan put on a face of innocence. "This man's too hard to please. I already said that I'm not going to go. So why does he still look as if he wants to murder someone?" Chapter 11. Did I scare all of you? The atmosphere in the house slowly chilled. The relationship between Han and herself seemed to return to the way it was before she was reborn. The fear for the person in front of her started creeping back into her body. Fortunately, at this moment, a pair of footsteps broke the deadlock. Sui brought with him a group of gardeners, florists, and builders into the dining hall and spoke. "Ninth Master, the repair works in the garden." Sui broke off mid-sentence and saw a girl sitting on the left of Han. He paused momentarily while the workers behind him gave each other puzzled looks. He wasn't just surprised because of this girl's beautiful appearance, but everyone knew that the master had a serious case of OCD and was disgusted with women. There was only one woman in the world that the master could tolerate, and that was none other than Wan. So who exactly was this woman? Wan looked at Sui and the workers. She took a bite of the prawn dumpling and said apologetically, I forgot to put on my makeup today. Did I scare all of you?" Wan. Upon hearing this familiar voice, everybody including Sui was flabbergasted. That ugly creature looked appalling but had a great voice, like a clear stream in Jiangnan, crystalline and bright. Yet this beautiful voice caused all of them to have a reflexive reaction of revulsion. After all, ever since this woman entered Jing Garden, all these people had suffered as well. The girl that appeared beside the master now, as pretty as a lotus flower that rose from beneath the water, was actually Wan. Seeing everyone's reaction, Wan thought seriously, "Surely I look better than before, right? I remember all of you were most surprised when I dyed my hair green. Maybe I should change it back tomorrow?" They weren't surprised. They were obviously horrified. Sui finally came around and shook his head fervently. No, miss. You look really good like that." Little did he expect that Wan looked like this without makeup. "So all along this, miss, you didn't have issues with coordinating colors, but actually had mental issues? Master's eyes must be really sharp." How is it possible that he was able to see her natural state through her makeup that's as thick as a wall? If Yuan knew what was running through Suyi's mind, she would definitely tell him that his master didn't need to see through the wall. Instead, his master had a fondness for the wall. Are all of you here to discuss the repair works of the garden? Yuan asked. Sui nodded instinctively, yes. Yuan then probed. May I give you some suggestions? Considering that I'm going to live here for some time, why not make myself comfortable according to my liking? I'm not allowed to go to school, but this should be fine, right? She remembered that aside from leaving, Si Han would give in to any requests of hers. But hearing Yuan's request, Sui felt like killing himself. He immediately turned to Si Han for help, hoping that he could decide for himself. Ninth Master, please, I beg you, do not let her destroy the garden anymore. Si Han replied Yuan with 3 words, up to you. Sui, fine. I already knew it would be like that. Sui could only accept his fate miserably and asked, Miss, what request do you have? Yuan thought carefully. I don't like the roses and lavender. Could you change that plot to sunflowers instead? Sui was speechless for a moment. He asked instinctively, Miss, you like sunflowers? Compared to burn those flowers or pull all of them out type of requests, Yuan's current request was too normal. Yuan thought for a moment and replied, there is. Sui didn't understand. Then why? Yuan's eyes brightened. So in the future, the seeds can be fried and eaten. Sui, Si Han. Yuan then pointed to the far side. Also, that pond over there. Don't keep those dead expensive kois anymore. They are so weak and inedible. Put in some grass carps, silver carps, little sea shrimps. Change the rose pergola to grape pergola. Actually, you can grow some sweet potatoes too. Chapter 12. Did I starve you? Also, the lawn in the east is burnt anyway. So why don't we plow it to grow some cabbage since the soil is fertilized? See, cabbage. Sui was speechless and Si Han's expression was also unreadable. Yuan lowered her voice and asked meekly, what's the problem? Si Han tapped the white porcelain mug and looked up. Am I starving you here? Yuan choked. No. Ever since she was little, she didn't lack for clothes or food. At Si Han's place, this was also true. The chefs at Jean Garden always came up with different creative foods daily just to get her to eat more because if she ate less than the benchmark Si Han had set for her, those chefs would be fired. But she didn't know what was wrong with herself either. She had a habit of hoarding food like a hamster. The more food surrounding her, the more secure she felt. In her previous life, due to Si Han's constant monitoring, she felt dejected and slowly lost her appetite. With such a rare chance to be reborn, aside from dolling herself up, she wanted to have good meals, otherwise it would be a waste of this second chance. After a long time, Si Han looked at Sui. Make the changes accordingly. Sui replied with an ashen face. Yes, he was simply too gullible, thinking that this woman had really changed. She wants to change the prestigious private Jean Garden into a vegetable farm. This is insane. Yuan jumped for joy when Si Han agreed to it. She squealed excitedly. Great. This way, we can have good food when autumn comes. When autumn comes. Hearing these 3 words, Si Han's expression changed slightly, his eyes as well. The Yuan from before only thought of running away from him. Since when did she think about the future? For the whole day, Yuan discussed in detail the crops to grow in each area with Sui and assigned jobs to the servants. When evening came, the Jean Garden that Yuan destroyed looked completely brand new again. Cabbage in the east, sunflowers in the west. The walls had newly built grape shelves. Those expensive plantations had been replaced by vegetables and fruit. The water in the pond had been changed and the beautiful carp and live prawns were swimming inside happily. Every flower and plant in the old Jean Garden was rare and so priceless that even the workers had to be wary of every step they took. Otherwise, they could accidentally kill a plant worth hundreds and thousands of dollars. Now, although it had become a vegetable plantation, any accident would still be frowned upon. Maybe she had done too much physical work that day, but Yuan's appetite was back and she ate heartily during dinner. After filling herself up and fueling herself with energy, She reflected on what happened that day. There wasn't only the issue of going back to school, but the problematic relationship and situation between her and Se-Han too. To create change, she had to have a talk with him. Se-Han's room was on the top floor, the room that she would never go near previously. Dong dong dong. Yi-Wan stood nervously in front of the door, took a deep breath and knocked. Squeak, the door opened and a pair of cold, deep eyes greeted her. "Hey, I have something to discuss with you. Is this a convenient time?" The man seemed to have expected her arrival. Without a look of surprise, he turned and walked back into the house silently, indicating his approval. Yi-Wan quickly kept up with him. "I must settle this by tonight no matter what." Chapter 13. Eating sweet melons. This was the first time Yi-Wan entered Se-Han's bedroom. She took a step in and immediately felt a kind of overwhelming oppression. The room had a depressing color scheme, and in her field of view was a superior audio system playing soothing music in the background. The curtains were drawn completely, and the whole room felt shut in. There was a great abundance of alcohol in the room. A row of various hard liquors was neatly lined in a huge alcohol cabinet. Other than Se-Han, there was someone else in the room. Se-Han's hypnotist. From the looks of it, Se-Han was preparing for bed. Well, so much fuss just to go to bed. Seeing that he slept quite soundly last night, it was probably due to the lack of sleep for the past 3 nights. As Yi-Wan entered, the hypnotist left. Under the warm glow of light above her head, Se-Han walked over to the bar, sat down and poured himself a glass of red wine. "Go on." Yi-Wan had already prepared a script earlier, so she didn't hesitate and went straight to the point. "I wish to talk about our relationship." "Our relationship?" The man raised his brows, expressing interest in the topic. Yi-Wan nodded and said in a serious tone, "Yes." "Se-Han, what do you think about our current relationship?" "Se-Han, you belong to me." Yi-Wan indicated that she couldn't continue this conversation that had just started. It was like the question she asked him before about why that person must be her, and to that he replied, "Because it has to be you." She couldn't comprehend any of his answers. Yi-Wan forced herself to ignore the man's reply and continued, "Se-Han, all this time, I didn't understand why you fancied me. With your status, you're able to get any girl you want. Even if you like someone that is fat or weird, there are countless girls who would be willing to cater to your taste. No matter what the original reason was, since we can't change that at this point, why don't we try changing our relationship? You've always been so angry that I kept running away, but that was only because nobody could tolerate being monitored, controlled, and having their freedom taken away. The more you try to control and force me, the more I try to escape. As the saying goes, a melon forced off its vine is not sweet. I am sure you know this principle." The man listened silently until she finished speaking. He was resting his head on his hand lazily and had another hand swirling the wine glass. He replied, "Whoever said that I liked sweet melons?" Yi-Wan. There is no way to have a reasonable conversation with this guy. She understood what Se-Han meant. As long as she was his property, nothing else mattered, including the wishes of this property. Since the conversation had reached this point, there was no way of continuing. Time went by slowly. Unsure how long they were silent for, Yi-Wan suddenly stood up and walked towards him. Se-Han didn't say a word, and his face remained indifferent as he watched her approaching. Finally, Yi-Wan stood in front of the man. She leaned towards him all of a sudden, and her soft lips landed on the man's slightly chilled lips. "You sure?" The girl's tactfully soft voice stuck to his lips. She asked with an innocence that was alluring, "Are you sure you don't like sweet melons?" Chapter 14. Rotten melon. Se-Han's pupils constricted the moment the girl's soft lips touched his. His eyes became darker than usual, as if to suck her soul in. This voluntary kiss that had never happened before was so beautifully sweet that his heart started to palpitate. "That's all?" The man's voice was a little hoarse with an edge of danger, obviously unsatisfied. Yi-Wan coughed lightly. "This was just a preview. I can't give you any more since I haven't grown into a sweet melon." "Oh," the man gave a chuckle. Yi Wan retreated a safe distance away from the man's searing stare. Pushing on, she continued, "Actually, all I want is to be a normal girl and learn to fall in love. I promise I'll never run away again. You also shouldn't make me do what I don't want to do and be angry and scary all the time, all right? That Guyuze before, my brain was clamped by an obsession with that man, but I understand now. I feel that with ninth master's status, as long as we regain a normal relationship, I can definitely grow to become a sweet melon with time." Yi Wan spoke till her tongue was parched. "Actually, sweet melons are quite delicious. I think you should give them a try. How would you know whether you like them or not if you haven't tried them, right?" She waited anxiously for his reply. Si Han smiled vaguely at the little melon seedling, trying so hard to promote herself. He asked faintly, "What if it becomes rotten?" The corners of Yi Wan's lips lifted upwards. She wiped off her sweat and said, "It won't happen. It won't happen. I'll work hard and grow. I'll definitely become a beautiful sweet melon." A moment passed in silence, and just as Yi Wan was about to give up, the man finally relented. "Fine." Yi Wan was stunned for a while before responding to Si Han's agreement. Her face was filled with joy. "You agree? So I'm allowed to go back to school? Can I stay in the school's dormitory like the other students? Can I do whatever I want to do? Then I am off to pack my things. I'll move into the school's dormitory tomorrow, but I'll come back and visit the vegetable garden whenever I'm free." After finishing her sentence, she skipped away happily and quickly, in case Si Han changed his mind. Looking at how eagerly the girl left, Si Han's expression turned gloomy, as if he regretted his decision immediately. But when his fingers touched the remnants of her soft kiss on his lips, the gloominess in his eyes dissipated. "Wan, this is the last time I am trusting you, and it is also your final chance. If you betray me..." Back in the room, Yi Wan hurriedly packed all her textbooks and luggage. That actually worked. This feels like a dream. Then, her cell phone started ringing. It was an incoming call from Shen Mingqi. Yi Wan lips turned into a scowl and answered the call. "Hello?" Once the call was connected, Shen Mingqi's exasperated voice came through the receiver. Wan, I kept calling you. Why didn't you answer? Are you all right? Why didn't you leave with young Master Gu? Did you know how much effort I had to put in to convince young Master Gu? I can't explain it properly over the phone. We'll talk about it in school tomorrow." "Wah. What? Mr. C didn't ground you? He's even allowing you to go to school?" Shen Mingqi's tone changed. After seeing that Yi Wan wanted to elope with Gu Yuze, how could Si Han let it go so easily? Or has Si Han started to dislike her, so he doesn't want her to live in the Jing Garden anymore? Yi Wan refused to go into the details and simply replied, "Yup, I'll be moving back to the dormitory tomorrow." Shen Mingqi asked anxiously, "Was it because Mr. C saw you and Gu Yuze together and misunderstood? So he's chasing you out?" Yi Wan smirked and took her time to reply. "How do you know Si Han saw me and Gu Yuze together? He wasn't home those few days. Don't you know that?" I was guessing. Anyway, tell me more when you come back to school." Chapter 15. Insomnia Sure. Yi Wan sneered and hung up. She wanted to get even with Shen Mingqi in this life, but she might hurt someone in the process. Her useless brother was still under her spell. If she acted on Shen Mingqi now, it would only worsen her relationship with her brother. Thus, she could only wait for the right opportunity. Inside the master's bedroom at the top level, after Yi Wan left, the hypnotist came back into the room and prepared for treatment again. "Ninth master, can we start now?" Si Han seemed to be preoccupied with thoughts and appeared to not hear what the hypnotist said. He just casually raised his arm. So, the hypnotist played music, lighted special incense, and started the psychological session. Half an hour later, 2 hours later, hypnosis failed. He, Immerse, had cured numerous complicated cases and was also hired by the world's #1 mercenary group, Gods of Dust, as a top counselor and psychologist. But now, he began to question his abilities for the millionth time. Each time he treated Si Han, he felt like a quack. Ever since Si Han got together with that woman Yi Wan, every time she ran away or went against him, It made his insomnia more severe. But didn't Sui say that that woman had thought it through and became meeker recently? Just now when he saw her, he was shocked. Not only had her appearance changed, her disposition was different as well, not as somber as before. Since that woman hadn't aggravated Si Han, why did the hypnosis fail this time? At this moment, Si Han was lying in bed with dark eye circles slowly building. The green veins on his forehead were bulging and his expression was grim, obviously trying to endure the suffering. It was like a scary beast lived inside him. The loss of control, the manic and destructive behavior were eroding his spirit now. Si Han's condition worsened and Immerse's glum face became more serious. He asked anxiously, "Ninth Master, did you have any problems today? What did Miss Yi say to you just now?" Si Han's eyes that were tightly shut quickly opened up, his pupils cold. Strong coercion caused Immerse to stop asking. If Si Han was willing to share his emotions with people, his illness wouldn't have been so serious. His psychological barrier was too strong. He didn't allow anyone to enter his territory. There was nothing a psychologist could do, no matter how skilled, if the patient didn't cooperate. Thinking about Yi Wanwan, Immerse's emotions became a bit complicated. There was nothing wrong with Si Han's body, and his sleeping disorder could be traced to a psychological issue. But this woman may be related to the knot in Si Han's heart. Otherwise, it was too difficult to explain why a person who discriminated against women the way Si Han did was so determined to be with this ordinary girl. Furthermore, based on what he'd observed, Yi Wanwan could easily manipulate Si Han's moods. However, he could no longer get an answer from Si Han and couldn't get any useful information from Yi Wanwan either. The Yi family was in the entertainment business. Yi Wanwan's second uncle was currently the head of the Yi family and owned most of the businesses in the entertainment group. But compared to the long history and deep background of the old and well-known Si family, the Yi family was just an average family. Be it Yi Wanwan or her family, it wasn't possible to have any relation with Si Han, the family heir of the Si family, the family that ruled all the country's old and well-known families. Therefore, Si Han's special treatment towards Yi Wanwan was simply puzzling. Chapter 16. Won't this prick your conscience? The morning of the second day, Yi Wanwan slept all the way through and woke up slowly. Then, she considered her makeup for the day. Although her previous horrendous makeup had caused her to suffer quite a bit, it was her shield. It helped her escape from her problems. Without it, she was afraid that she couldn't go to school anymore. It was, after all, the first awakening of love for teenage boys and girls in high school. If she showed her true self and a guy confessed his love for her, it would be over for her. Furthermore, the most important thing for her now was to please Si Han. Since Si Han liked how she looked before, she didn't mind making a sacrifice to keep him happy. With such a rare chance to be reborn, even if she couldn't wait to be herself again, she knew that until she was strong enough, things like this didn't matter. Yi Wanwan then put on her usual makeup and wore a shiny green wig. When Yi Wanwan went downstairs, she didn't see Si Han around, but the Lin K fellow was there again. He was speaking to someone excitedly when he raised his eyes and saw her. He immediately spat out his coffee. "My eyes." Yi Wanwan rolled her eyes at him. That was nothing to be surprised about. Her eyes swept around the room downstairs and realized that not only was Lin K around but Si Han's good friend, Xie was there as well. Xie glittering peach blossom eyes looked up at Yi Wanwan, focusing on her hair. He was stunned, obviously shocked by her. "Lin second, this is why you woke me up at 5 in the morning to rush to the Jean Garden to see. A surprise? Well, it's quite a surprise indeed. Little Ye's style is getting more and more creative, I see." No. Yesterday she didn't have any makeup on and was really beautiful. I was speechless, Lin K explained. Xie laughed so hard. Yes, I can see that she's really beautiful. Don't worry, you can also find yourself someone with this style like Ninth Brother did. Lin K had no way of explaining himself and just stared at Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan raised her brows. "Why are you looking at me? Putting on makeup is a girl's most basic form of respect for others, don't you know?" The corners of Lin K's mouth twitched. "You are so respectful." At this moment, there was the sound of footsteps above them. Si Han was awake. He looked downstairs, and when his gaze fell upon Yuan, he didn't show any reaction. He was, if anything, the one with the strongest mentality. He did not even bat an eyelid when he saw her like that. Yuan didn't forget that it was utterly important to please and show her sincerity to Si Han so that he would trust her and be assured. So she skipped towards Si Han to fish for compliments. Ninth Master, do I look good today? Since Si Han had an acquired taste, her current look should please him, right? Si Han looked at the sparkling eyes in front of him, begging for compliments, and the radiant expression on her face. He was gloomy the entire night because of her leaving, but seeing this cheered him up a bit. Yep, Yuan was elated. She was right. Lin Ke could not bear to look. Ninth brother, doesn't this prick your conscience? Looking at how Yuan and Si Han were getting along so well, Xie Zhizhi was a little taken aback as he raised his brows and his fingers lightly tapped his chin. Behind his dashing face was a man deep in thought. Chapter 17. Stop teasing me or you'll regret it. Shortly, breakfast was served by the servants. The four of them sat down and started eating. Yuan looked at Si Han sitting next to her, and then turned to Lin Ke and Xie Zhizhi sitting opposite. She felt like she was in a fantasy, being able to dine on the same table with these three big shots. After all, these three gentlemen here would all become important and influential people in the future. Needless to say, for Si Han, he would have control over the whole Si family. As for Lin Ke, he may look quite powerless now, but in reality, he was born into a military political aristocratic family. His grandfather was one of the founding fathers, Lin Zhengrong, General Lin. The Lin Ke 7 years later was also all-powerful and ruthless in the political scene. However, due to the fact that the Yi family was in the entertainment business, Yuan paid the most attention to the actor Xie Zhizhi. He must have felt Yuan sneaking glances at him. Xie Zhizhi tilted his head, blinked at her with his seductive peach blossom eyes and asked, "Little Yi, do you want an autograph?" Damn, he caught me with just that one glance. This guy was exactly like a male fox. No wonder he stole the hearts of all the girls in Z country. An autograph? Of course I want one. Xie Zhizhi is going to be an Oscar award-winning actor in the future. Z country's very first male actor with an Oscar award. This autograph would be worth quite a lot if I sold it. Even now, Xie Zhizhi received numerous big awards and was the most popular guy in the entertainment scene. The male actor that every teenage girl in Z country was crazy for. Aside from his autograph, just any telephone booth that featured his public photo became a popular attraction that many fangirls would swarm to take pictures of. But considering the possessiveness of that pervert Si Han, Yuan eventually shook her head to herself. How could I dare to keep another man's autograph? There's no way unless I'm tired of living. Seeing that Yuan obviously wanted his autograph, but painfully rejected it after peeking at Yi Si Han, Xie Zhizhi laughed. Little Yi is really cute. Yuan, stop this, movie god Xie. Stop teasing me, or I will fall out with you. Can't you see the mushroom cloud of anger forming on top of your buddy's head? Lin Ke shot a look at Xie Zhizhi and curled his lips in disapproval. Xie the Third, where are your standards? You're teasing even someone like Yuan. Xie Zhizhi's fingers lightly stroked the dewy petals of the rose in the vase and said softly, all the girls in the world are flowers. They should all be treasured and loved. His words spoke right to Yuan's heart. Yuan immediately glared at Lin Ke and said, heard that? Learn something from that, you single dog. Lin Ke flared up, damn, who are you calling a single dog? You're the single dog. Yuan tilted her head towards Si Han next to her. Darling, Lin Jr. called me a single dog. What does he mean by that? Is he cursing us to break up? Hearing Yuan call him darling was like having sweet streams flowing through his damaged brain, but having heard the end of that sentence, he turned to stare coldly at Lin Quebec. Lin Ke immediately curled into a ball cowardly. Ninth brother. I was wrong, sob. Yuan, you crook. Xie Zhizhi looked at Si Han with his head tilted, who was fixated on the woman sitting opposite with heavy makeup and a green wig. Hey buddy, I haven't seen you for a few days and this little girl of yours seems to have become a different person entirely? Si Han looked at her. Become a different person? Her only change was that she became slightly smarter and decided to change her strategy of running away from me. As he saw Si Han's eyes turn dark, Xie raised his brows with a mischievous grin on his face. Tisk, since you already know her motive, why do you still give in to her? This is so unlike you. I'm full. Heading to school now. At this moment, Yuan had finished her breakfast, picked up her school bag and luggage, and waved goodbye to Si Han. Just as she was about to leave, she turned back and skipped towards Si Han. Carrying her school bag, she hugged Si Han's neck and kissed him on the lips. Don't forget to miss me. After she'd said her piece, she left the three speechless men and skipped away happily. After a long while, Si Han lounged lazily on his seat and looked at his friends indifferently, because I found out that I actually like having sweet melons better. Chapter 18. Study Hard Qinghe High School, a renowned school known to have the best teaching standards and highest enrollment rate in Imperial City. Yuan studied overseas and returned at the age of 16. She didn't take the entrance exam and shouldn't technically have been able to enter Qinghe. She was only able to enter due to the fact that her dad was the acting chairman of Yi Holdings at the time, allowing her to enter through the back door, so to speak. She had already been in high school for 4 years, from the ages of 16 to 20, yet she had yet to graduate. Initially, she didn't do well in school because she had fallen in love. Her teenage heart was with Gu Yuze, who was tall and handsome. She spent all day thinking of how to please him, wrote him hundreds of love letters, and even folded 1,000 paper cranes. After all that, her grades suffered due to this boy. The morning glow from the sun shone brightly on her green wig. Yuan stood in front of the gates of Qinghe High School and looked at the 4 enormous words, Qinghe High School, overhead. She made a commitment to herself in her heart no matter what. This time nobody is going to stop me from studying hard. She entered the familiar yet unfamiliar school grounds, with 2 paths lined with big old trees and air filled with a crisp scent of grass. Further up was a row of vintage, red-tiled buildings, with the speakers broadcasting melodious music and groups of students carrying their school bags engrossed in chatter while making their way to class. After so many days of being reborn, this was the first time that Yuan actually felt alive again. Glancing at the azure blue sky above her, she almost had the urge to cry. She didn't even care about the strange looks and whispers around her. Compared to what she had gone through in her previous life, school gossip didn't hurt her one bit. Whoa, who is that? She gave me such a shock that I nearly knocked into a tree. A boy swerved away from a big tree with a face filled with shock. The girl at the side replied in a high-pitched voice, "You don't know her? She's Yuan from F class." Damn, SHE is Yuan? Really, seeing her for myself is better than hearing about her 100 times from other people. Another girl said with disgust on her face, "Never mind that she puts on such heavy makeup and dresses weirdly, but her grades are atrocious as well. It's been 4 years, and she still hasn't graduated. I heard she has quite an indecent personal life, always skipping classes to fool around. Why is a person like this not expelled yet? She's a disgrace to Qinghe High." One of the students interrupted, "Maybe they couldn't expel her. Apparently, she comes from a wealthy family. Didn't she enter through the back door?" The girl scoffed, "Oh please." Shinmeng Qi said that Yuan's father embezzled money and was fired. He's even in a buttload of debt with the loan sharks. Apparently her days are numbered here. I heard the school decided to convince her to drop out. After all, the top management leader will be coming to observe today, and if he finds out that our school has this kind of student, then our decades-long prestige will be destroyed. The few onlookers around them rejoiced. Finally, we don't have to be in the same school as a girl like this. Chapter 19. My rightful place. Yuan listened to the gossip around her with interest and overheard some things she wanted to forget while strolling to the door of F class. The moment she reached the door, a weird hush fell over the room, and immediately after came the crazy pounding of desks and whistleblowing. Everybody was trying to stir up trouble. To put it plainly, she was a clown for these students' amusement whenever they were bored. And Yuan never let them down. Haha, wow. Yuan, your hair is awesome. Yes. Better than your explosive hair the other day. The guys were having a great laugh at her expense while the girls looked at her with disapproval and disgust. Why is it so noisy? Silence, all of you. Didn't you hear the bell ring? Came the raging voice of their teacher from the door. Yi-Wan-Wan, it's you again. You. Have you looked at yourself in the mirror? Hurry back to your seat. The form teacher looked at Yi-Wan-Wan's green wig and was so angry that her lungs nearly exploded. She wanted to continue scolding Yi-Wan-Wan for a second, but instead retreated back to her desk, which was unprecedented. This student will soon be dropping out anyway. There's no need to waste my breath. Yi-Wan-Wan scanned the classroom. She didn't need to try to recall where her spot was. She knew exactly where it was. As the seats in every class were arranged according to their class ranking, she had always been the first from the back, meaning that she sat in the last row. In the seat in the last row next to the window was a boy lying down. The boy had messy and unkempt hair with earphones playing and was lying on the desk taking a nap. The sun's glow filtered in and danced on the teenager's delicate face, allowing him to look like a model right out of a fashion magazine. Xixia, Qinghe High School's hunk. Smoking, fighting, skipping class, he was well-versed in all of them. His grades were also awful, but because of his good looks and wealthy family, he secured the title of the school's hunk. Hearing footsteps coming towards him, the teenager opened his eyes in annoyance and yelled, "Get lost." The other students in the class, especially the girls, smirked at her misfortune. The girls had been admiring the face of His Royal Highness sleeping but were interrupted by this ugly woman. On what basis is that ugly woman allowed to share a table with Xixia? But this hunk looks so dashing even when he's in a rage and scolding people. Before her rebirth, although Yi-Wan-Wan put on heavy makeup on the outside, inside she was actually a simple girl. She had low self-esteem and a gloomy personality. Before, after being shouted at by Xixia, Yi-Wan-Wan would have obediently taken a seat at the broken chair next to the garbage can. But this time, after facing the wrath of the boy, Yi-Wan-Wan stood her ground. She gave him a faint smile, looked at him and planted her bum on the seat next to him like she hadn't heard anything. The boy's face contorted in anger. Do you want to die? Get lost. Yi-Wan-Wan placed her school bag under the table casually, took out her books and pencil case, and met the boy's eyes. My ranking is the first from the back, and this is my rightful place. Who are you to ask me to leave? Xixia. All the students in class. Even the teacher's face turned black. Chapter 20. Expulsion soon. The classroom was filled with surprised whispers. What? Has Yi-Wan-Wan lost her mind? How dare she offend Xixia? She's obviously taking the chance to get close to Xixia. It's such a good opportunity after all. Damn, won't she take a good look at herself? How dare a scum like her try to hit on our hunk? The young female form teacher was so angry that her face was literally black. Yi-Wan-Wan, you are going to be expelled soon. Why are you still here making trouble? Do you think ranking last in class is something admirable? How could I have taught such a shameless student like you? Immediately, all the girls were delighted hearing the teacher's words. Haha, I almost forgot that Yi-Wan-Wan is about to be expelled. So the news is true. That's fantastic. Let's see how cocky she's going to be after that. Her form teacher was initially planning to tolerate her till the notice of expulsion was issued formally, but she couldn't take it any longer and scolded her in front of everybody. Go look at yourself in the mirror and see how atrocious you look. Always dressing up as neither human nor ghost. Your grades are horrible as well, always coming in last in our class. The reputation of F class has been destroyed by scum like you. Garbage like you has dragged the entire class down, and you still show no remorse for what you've done. You, get out of here now. Seeing that Yi-Wan-Wan would be chased out, the girls were ecstatic. That ugly freak even wanted to dominate your highness. This is her payback. Get out, get out. Hurry and leave. Facing the jeers of the students, Yi-Wan-Wan remained unfazed and looked at the podium with cold eyes. Get out of school? I wonder who gave Miss Liang the authority to chase me out? Seeing that Yi-Wan-Wan dared to question her authority, Liang Li-Hua's face turned ugly in an instant and said sternly, through the school leader's unanimous decision, you have been expelled. Hearing her words, Yuan had a look of heavy skepticism. Oh, what unanimous decision by the school leaders. Even though I've broken a few school rules, they were all minor offenses like putting on makeup, not wearing the school uniform and skipping class. According to school regulations, you'll be expelled only if you are charged with 3 big offenses. She would be expelled completely because Liang Lihua had denigrated her in front of the school leaders. Typically speaking, as a teacher there was no need to make life difficult for a student. However, Yuan counted herself too lucky to have accidentally bumped into Liang Lihua having an affair with a certain married school leader previously. Naturally, Liang Lihua would try every way possible to get rid of this thorn in her side. It had been the same in her previous life. She made life difficult for Yuan daily, ridiculing her in front of the whole class, thus providing entertainment for the students. Why are you in such a daze? Leave now. Liang Lihua snapped and pointed outside the classroom, looking very eager. Yuan laughed coldly. Oh, there isn't even a notice of expulsion and I am supposedly expelled just based on Miss Liang's words? Are you in control of the school? Liang Lihua's face changed drastically, slamming her fists on the podium and shouted, Yuan, such disrespect. Is this the way you talk to a teacher? How did your parents raise you? Liang Lihua scowled and looked at her in disdain. But this was expected. Like parents, like daughter. With a father that embezzles and is deep in debt, what good can come out of his family? Liang Lihua exposed Yuan's private family affairs with a face full of loathing and mockery in front of all the students. Immediately, there was a circulation of whispers, and all the students looked repulsed. Yuan stood in silence, rooted at the same spot, expressionless. Only Xia, who was closest to her, could see that after hearing Liang Lihua's words about her father, Yuan's numb eyes shattered like ice, revealing an extremely scary chill. The boy's brows twitched and doubt flashed before his eyes. Was that an illusion? Chapter 21. Her ability to remember everything. There was silence for a moment. Then Yuan said casually, I see. Like parents, like daughter. Then can I say like teacher, like student? F class is the school's worst class. How do you feel about that, Miss Liang? You unruly kid. Liang Lihua was so angry that her voice broke. This stupid girl. How dare she insult my teaching standards? With F class having the worst results among the other classes, this had always been a source of agony for her. All the students in the classroom were speechless. Damn, this Yuan actually has the audacity to talk back to the form teacher. Is this the same Yuan who didn't dare to make a sound whenever she got yelled at? Liang Lihua laughed coldly. Yuan, did you really think I couldn't handle you? I'll force you to walk through Qinghe High School's main gate. Yuan gave a faint laugh and looked at Liang Lihua. What's stopping you, Miss Liang? You're so powerful. Of course you can handle a student like me. Yuan purposely added emphasis to you're so powerful, obviously hinting about Liang Lihua and the school leader's illicit relationship. As expected, Liang Lihua's expression changed. Although Yuan didn't have any proof, nor would people believe anything she said. If she merely spread the rumors around, that would be enough. There'd definitely be people who'd investigate, especially since the school leader's wife was a school teacher as well. This stupid girl, how dare she threaten her? Ring, the official bell rang, indicating the start of lessons, and broke the stalemate. Liang Lihua's face darkened and said angrily, there is only one more week left until exams. Thanks to you, lessons were interrupted. I'll deal with you later. Forget it, this stupid girl will be leaving in a couple of days. There is no need to blow up the matter now. Everybody, please turn to page 72 of your textbook. The students sighed in disappointment, seeing that the drama had ended. Senior year classes were spent completing numerous major and minor exams. The exam this time was considered more important, and the seats would be reallocated based on the results. Yuan swept through the contents of the textbook and closed her eyes. Within the next second, the contents of the textbook were imprinted clearly within her mind. It was known to very little people that she had the ability to remember everything she read. Once she read the information in the textbook, she would be able to pin everything down, even without going through her brain. How well she performed was totally dependent on how well she wanted to perform. Unfortunately, results and scores to the Yi Wanwan of the past didn't mean anything. Her heart was never focused on her studies. If she wanted the school to eradicate the decision to expel her, the examination this time around was crucial. Although it was a little rushed with a week left to study, it was sufficient for her. Chapter 22. A slacker has no right to complain. If she wanted the school to eradicate the decision to expel her, the exam this time around was crucial. Although it was a little rushed with a week left to study, it was sufficient for her. Yuan Wan stopped her thoughts and started studying the textbook intently. The boy that was lying on the desk next to her awoke to the sound of pages flipping, furrowed his brows, and looked beside him. Once he raised his head, his eyes fell upon Yuan Wan reading. This girl decided to change after being traumatized? He was still thinking about it until he realized what Yuan Wan was doing. His expression turned gloomy. Yuan Wan was flipping through the pages faster than she flipped out in class today. How is this reading? But if she's not reading, what is she doing? Is she so bored that she's flipping through the pages for fun? Noisy. The boy's handsome face was filled with annoyance. Yuan Wan's expression turned slightly darker. This bastard is still full of energy. Huh. Believe it or not, I will use my seniority to crush you. According to seniority, he's supposed to respectfully call me ninth aunt. In her previous life, she only found out later that the hunk of Qing he was actually the nephew of Si Han. Yuan Wan raised her brows. Oh, you find me noisy? If you're so smart, then do well on the exam and move to the front then. The weak will always fall prey to the strong, and the strongest will get the most respect. Slackers don't have the right to complain. The boy was dumbfounded after being told off. Did he just get mocked by the lousiest student in school? Oh, very well. For this exam, he would let her know exactly what it meant for the weak to fall prey to the strong. The day went by quickly as the final school bell rang. Skipping class was always fun, while studying felt like being in a crematorium. For the whole day, Yuan Wan looked at people with double vision, with words floating around in her vision. In the coming week, there would be no classes, so everyone could focus on studying for the coming exams. Qinghe High School used the enclosed teaching method. Except for special circumstances, every student had to live on school grounds. After school, the students filed back into their hostels. Yuan Wan also brought her luggage and followed them towards the hostel building. Each dormitory was occupied by 4 people. However, her roommates jointly excluded her, so she had one room to herself. In addition, nobody knew about her relationship with Si Han, so in fact, living alone was ideal for her. Her fair and delicate fingers gently pushed the door open, and a familiar scent immediately came over her. The room was not big, but it was enough for her. Compared to the enormous Jean garden, this gave her a sense of security. Furthermore, Qinghe had always been funded by rich business owners and school associates, so the hostel was quite decent. Other than air conditioning, each room had its own ensuite bathroom as well. Yuan Wan put her luggage down and tidied up. Once she was done, she was about to take a seat and start studying until a knock on the door interrupted her. When she opened the door, Shun Mengqi was standing there in a light pink lace dress. Tears started rolling once the girl saw Yuan Wan. Wan Wan, you're finally in school. I was so worried. It's so great to see that you're fine. Looking at Shin Mengqi's extremely concerned reaction, Yuan Wan could not help but feel touched. With such a display of her acting skills, it would be difficult to alter Shin Mengqi's course in the entertainment business. Yuan Wan sat down in front of her desk, annoyed that she was disturbed. Is there a problem? Whatever it is, please come back in a week. I don't have time now. Shin Mengqi assumed she had fought with Gu Yuze and was in a bad mood and cooed. I think Mr. Gu misunderstood your relationship with Si Han, but he loves you deeply and has a strong sense of responsibility. You're still in his heart, otherwise, he wouldn't have helped you. As long as you go and explain the misunderstanding to him, everything will be fine. Yuan Wan didn't have time to entertain this actress and was already engrossed in her book at this point. Shin Mengqi saw that Yuan Wan didn't stop flipping through pages in annoyance and guessed that she wasn't calming down and decided to stop trying to convince her. Then Wan Wan, I'm leaving first since exams are coming and I have to study. My dad will give me a new phone if I stay in the top 3 in class. Come find me if you have a problem. Got it. Yi Wanwan didn't even lift her head. Shin Ming-chi furrowed her brows a little, not being used to Yi Wanwan's cold attitude. Just as she was about to leave, she caught a glimpse of a nicely decorated paper, a love letter. Chapter 23. A love letter to Yi Han. Shan Ming-chi sneered inside. I thought that Yi Wanwan had a bit of integrity this time. Turns out she's still the same miserable wretch. Why would she change anyway? In a flash, Shun Ming-chi went behind Yi Wanwan's back, took out her phone sneakily to take a photo in Yi Wanwan's direction, and then left the room silently. Back in her hostel, Shun Ming-chi obviously did not study but instead immediately sent a message to Yi Han. Yi Han finally dumped that garbage Yi Wanwan, and now it was her perfect chance. Yi Han is the successor of the Si family, which is Z country's first blue blood, and so he was unattainable to commoners. As for her, not only did she have Yi Han's personal number, but she could also enter the so-called Imperial City's little palace, Jean Garden. She thought about how one day she would become the hostess of Jean Garden, with everybody talking about her relationship with Yi Han, and she shivered in delight. If even Yi Wanwan, that bag of straw, can get Yi Han, how is it possible that I can't? After all, he treats me so differently. Not only can I walk in and out of Jean Garden, I get so many expensive gifts too. If I encounter any problems, I can bring it up to him and he'll always send people to help. Shin Ming-chi's cheeks turned scarlet red, her whole face filled with sweetness and confidence. She just needed to work a little harder, and this man would be hers sooner or later. Mr. C, I heard that you and Yi Wanwan fought. Are you okay? Don't you worry about Wanwan. I just want to see her. She's doing quite well. There was an image attached to this message, the one she secretly took of Yi Wanwan with the love letter in plain sight. With Yi Han's observant skills, he would definitely spot the love letter written to Gu Yuze. He would know that after Yi Wanwan left him, she was feeling great and even aggressively chasing after Gu Yuze. She had to fan the flames now and make Yi Han hate Yi Wanwan without any possibility of changing his mind. At this moment, Yi Wanwan was in her hostel. After Shun Ming-chi left, Yi Wanwan continued reading, but she had the nagging feeling that something was off. She looked at the corner of her desk subconsciously. Sure enough, there was a draft of a love letter on the corner. It was written for Gu Yuze, but she hadn't finished writing it, so it hadn't been mailed out. TSK almost forgot about this. In her previous life, Yi Han grounded her and she naturally resisted. Only when she threatened to kill herself did she manage to successfully go back to school. Since Shun Ming-chi kept making trouble, she was unable to attend school for long, and her reputation was destroyed. And the first time Shin Ming-chi made trouble between her and Yi Han was by using this love letter. Even though things were a little different in this life, according to her understanding of Shin Ming-chi, she would never let go of a chance to smear her name even if she broke up with Yi Han. Yi Wanwan picked up that love letter, spun the pencil in her hand, and the corners of her mouth turned up slowly. Thank goodness this love letter was just a draft and hadn't been addressed to anybody yet. So, why can't it be written for Yi Han? Yi Wanwan grabbed her phone, took a picture of the love letter, and quickly sent it to Yi Han with a heart-shaped emoticon. Chapter 24. Mushy to death after sending the text message, Yi Wanwan left the love letter in its place and seized every second to study. But at this very moment in Jean Garden, everything was being turned upside down in chaos. The man on the sofa became crazy and reckless, his black pupils dark like the winter night. His fingers were dripping blood from smashing the cup, and the coffee table was overturned on the floor. There was a strong oppressive atmosphere raging throughout the big room. All the servants in the house were shaking in fear and hiding in a corner. None of them even dared to breathe. Suyi's back was drenched in sweat. He straightened his back and stood next to the man. He eyed the broken phone on the floor, face full of despair. It was a good quality phone, and even with the screen cracked, it clearly showed an image of a love letter. Damn, I knew this would happen. That woman was devoted to the man by the surname Gu. She didn't care about being dumped or left at the altar and still stuck to him. How was it possible that she'd suddenly change her mind and decide to live happily with the master? Isn't this lying to the master on one hand and immediately chasing Gu Yuze on the other? She even wrote such a mushy love letter. She is simply shameless. There was a poem on the love letter. It roughly meant that she was willing to be the collar on his clothes to feel his fragrance, willing to be the belt on his coat to hug his waist, willing to be the oil on his hair to moisten his black hair. Totally obscene love song. No wonder Master's so mad. She was just a woman, and a disobedient one at that. Why must he spoil her? Treating her like a pet would be good enough. Master must be out of his mind. He actually got fooled by that woman's words. At this moment, the man's face turned gloomy. The wild beast had unleashed from its cage, licking its claws, emitting bloodthirsty breath in the air. One, I have said this before. This was your last chance. The last time I trust you. Get her back. From the sofa came the hoarse and low voice of the man. Sui was frightened by the man's dark, cold expression, and he quickly responded, "Yes, I'll send my people after her this instant." In a flash, a row of black cars left Jean Garden silently and entered the darkness. In the living room, all the servants were as silent as cicadas in the winter, their hearts filled with discontent. Ever since that woman entered Jean Garden, they didn't have a single day of peace. She had fouled the whole atmosphere of Jean Garden. Sui looked out the window at the thick, dark night, his heart glum as well. What was waiting for them next may be another storm. I wonder what that woman will do after she gets dragged back here. When that time came, the ones that would suffer the most would be the servants. Ding! Just then, the broken phone on the floor rang and the screen brightened at the same time. Sui picked the phone up to take a look and furrowed his brows together the next second. Why is it this love letter again? Moreover, this time it was only the picture of the love letter. Sui was still confused until he saw the sender and was flabbergasted. This message was not sent by Shinming Chi, it was Yuan. What? What does this mean? Could it be that the mushy love letter was not written for Gu Yuze, but Yuan wrote it for Master? Damn! Chapter 25. Food for Thought. How could this be? Sui stared at the text, his expression aghast. On his mind were those disgustingly mushy phrases in the poem. Sui was speechless. This was unbelievable. Yuan's love letter wasn't addressed to someone else, but written for his master. Sui's strange expression attracted Si Han's attention. The man's hoarse and deep voice said, "Bring it over." With Si Han's cold eyes aimed in his direction, Sui didn't hesitate and quickly fetched the phone for him obediently. The man tightened his grip on the phone, paused slightly, and finally scanned over the text message on the cracked screen. It was a picture message which featured the love letter that had caused his insides to be burnt to ashes just now. The man squinted his eyes dangerously, and in the next moment, he chanced upon the sender's name, Wan. Having seen the name in the sender column clearly, the man's dark, cold expression immediately froze on his face and turned to astonishment. This message was sent by Yuan. His fingers scrolled down and realized it was not just a love letter. Below the letter was a sweet heart-shaped emoticon. That letter of evidence announcing her betrayal to him once again. That love letter written to Gu Yuze was for him. Willing to be the collar on your clothes to feel your fragrance. Willing to be the belt on your coat to hug your waist. Willing to be the oil on your hair to moisten your black hair. While the man's expression was still blank, another text came in. Ninth Master, why haven't you replied? Did you like my poem? I want compliments, rewards, and kisses. The servants who had been trembling in the corner gazed at each other in confusion. They didn't understand why their master, who was raging mad like a lion and destroying everything a moment before, had become so quiet in the next second. He was also staring at his phone with fluctuating emotions, as if he was trying to decipher something. Sui, also uncertain about Si Han's attitude, opened his mouth slowly and carefully. Ninth Master, you, Si Han, be quiet. Sui shut his mouth instantly. Si Han continued staring at his phone with a serious face while his slender fingers tapped the screen. The man furrowed his brows slightly, since the screen was no longer fully functional due to the cracks. Sui was beyond curious. Unable to hold himself back, he stole a glance. Then, his eyes nearly went blind. Yi Wan had sent another message that was sweet enough to make a man blind, and his master was typing out his reply, "Good." At the end of his reply, he even added an earnest, kissing emoticon. Sui stared speechlessly at that kiss. He was completely unable to imagine his master sending that emoticon. As he watched on in horror, he heard the man's lazy voice, "Tell them to come back." His tone was not only lazy but full of contentment. He kept rereading the words of the poem over and over, obviously in a good mood. Yes. Sui quickly responded and called his men on their way to capture Yi Wan to come back. A crazy storm was simply eradicated like that. Chapter 26. Eternal Kisses at the Dormitory. Ninth Master, why haven't you replied? Did you like my poem? I want compliments, rewards, and kisses. There was no reply from the other end after Yi Wan sent that text. To play it safe, she had decided to send this to supplement the previous message. Actually, she felt a little uneasy as she was unsure whether this would work on Si Han. Also, that poem was supposed to be written by guys for their sweethearts. That guy wouldn't be offended at being treated like a woman and receiving such a mushy confession, would he? In her previous life, she had been dragged back in the middle of the night by Si Han's men. The chaos provoked much discussion in school with all sorts of rumors spreading around. Some said that she had a sugar daddy and was caught because she ran away. Some said that her family was deep in debt with loan sharks and they caught her to sell her body. Although the rumors were baseless, all these gossips could destroy a person. Thinking back on the past, Yi Wan felt a chill. Then, the phone in her palm suddenly vibrated. Yi Wan paused for a moment and slowly looked at the new text message. Si Han had replied her with a single word, "good," and even added a kissing emoticon. Yi Wan stared at that kiss, completely stunned. Could you imagine a ferocious and vicious monster sending you a kissing emoticon? At the same time, the chill that had pervaded her body dissipated due to that unbelievable emoticon. Si Han seemed to be different from the guy she had known in her previous life. In addition, she had also found out something incredible. Yi Wan cupped her chin, lightly tapped her cheeks, and composed another text message to send over. Eternal kisses, just one more week until exams. I will be focusing on my revision, so for now, I won't be able to text you anymore. You must remember to miss me every day. After Yi Wan sent the text, the opposite party replied within seconds, "Yeah." Staring at that incredibly simple "yeah," Yi Wan blinked in astonishment. That actually worked? I just said that I wouldn't be contacting him for a week. He's fine with that? She couldn't have guessed that. Just some casual flirting would be so useful. Yi Wan remained motionless for 3 seconds, then banged her head on her desk, wishing to kill herself. If she had known that Si Han was so easy to please, she wouldn't have suffered so much in her previous life. Fine, discovering the secret weapon to deal with that monster is definitely a good thing. After dealing with Si Han, Yi Wan had no more distractions. She could bury her head in her books and put her heart and soul into her studies. 7 days went by in a blink of an eye. In these 7 days, Yi Wan slept only 3 to 4 hours a day. Finally, she managed to cover all the material from senior years 1 to 3. Now that she realized how painful it was to not have enough sleep, she would sleep from dawn to dusk once exams were over. On the first day of exams was the comprehensive liberal arts and language exam. Yi Wan drifted into the classroom like a wandering ghost. Initially, there was some noisy chatter, but the moment Yi Wan appeared, it was like the stereo had been turned down and there was immediate silence. Yi Wan didn't wear her green wig today, and her makeup was also very light. However, she had stayed up for 7 days, so her dark circles looked scarier than her smoky eye makeup, and her messy waist-length hair was just as horrifying as her green wig. The boy sleeping on the desk as usual heard the shuffling of tables and chairs and opened his eyes in annoyance. The next second, the boy was so shocked that his whole body jerked back. The chair shrieked against the floor, letting out a piercing screech. The boy stared at the Sadako next to him, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. His face darkened and he cursed softly, "Shit." Chapter 27. Oh, math? This damned woman. That face of hers was scary enough, but she just had to dress in white today, huh? She can really scare the living daylights out of people. Yuan was in a good mood after seeing Xixia's reaction. She had been going blind from studying in the dormitory for 7 days and nights. All other things aside, this guy had inherited the Xi family's genetically good looks, which were quite pleasing to the eyes. Yuan grinned at him. I didn't think that our school's hunk was afraid of ghosts. She looks scarier when she smiles. Xixia took a deep breath. He couldn't bear the sight of her, so he turned away and scoffed. At least you're aware that you look like a ghost. No matter what, he had to do well this time and move to a seat far, far away. He couldn't stand another day of being here. The bell rang and the invigilator started giving out the exam booklets. The comprehensive liberal arts exam was held on the morning of the first day. Yuan looked through the entire paper before starting to answer the questions. Xixia had a glimmer of amazement in his eyes when he realized that the Yuan seated next to him actually picked up a pen to start writing. Everybody knew that Yuan handed in blank booklet every time. While he was in shock, he saw how Yuan answered the questions and his mouth started twitching. How is she answering the questions? She's clearly filling in the blanks blindly. She's filling up the booklet so fast, randomly selecting A, B, C, D, probably not even reading questions and relying on luck. The boy called her an idiot mockingly in his heart. If you want to rely on luck, why not fill in B for every question? There's a higher chance of getting them right, rather than filling them up randomly, which could potentially get you all the wrong answers. The boy stopped paying attention to the moron next to him and started concentrating on the exam. The duration of the comprehensive liberal arts exam was 150 minutes, taking up the entire morning. The English exam followed in the afternoon. The language exam was on the morning of the second day, and the last exam was math. Yuan stared at the math questions, looking at them again and again. The functions, algebra, and geometry were like a virus, causing her brain to break down. The world around Yuan started spinning, and she saw stars around her. After being in a frenzy for 3 seconds, she gave up on her answers and started to take a nap. Why must there be such a scary thing like math in this world? Although she had a photographic memory, she barely had enough time to finish reading 3 years' worth of textbooks. It was absolutely impossible to excel in math in such a short time, so she simply chose to give up. The bell rang and the last exam came to an end. Xixia glanced at his neighbor and realized that she was fast asleep on a completely blank math booklet. Judging by how she did at the beginning, I thought that maybe she wanted to make a change. Sure enough, as the saying goes, you can change mountains and rivers, but not a person's nature. After submitting the exam booklets, all the students looked as if their bodies were depleted. Finally, the exams are over. We're free. Most importantly, our school hunk will finally be able to sit at his usual place. That ugly freak, Yuan, is getting uglier and uglier. Xixia was so miserable to be frightened by her in the morning that his face turned pale. Aren't you aiming to get that seat first from the back? Let's see how she's going to cling on to Xixia this time. You all are overthinking. She'll be expelled even before the exam results are out. Before, all the teachers were busy with exams, so they didn't have time to deal with her. Now that exams are over, they'll definitely sort things out with her. Pity they didn't kick her out before exams. Our class scores will be pulled down by her again this time. Chapter 28. What if I end up at the top of the class? After the end of exams, the teachers started the grading process. As it was a simulation test, the marking process was basically modeled after college entrance exams. The names of the students were sealed, and the teachers didn't mark the exams of their own classes. After they finished marking, the teachers would then unseal the names to tabulate the scores and rankings. That night was destined to be a sleepless night, as everyone was comparing their answers nervously and guessing their results. As for Yuan, she rushed back to the dormitory immediately to make up her sleep debt after submitting her last exam. The next morning, Liang Lihua entered the classroom, beaming. In the morning, she had visited the student affairs office even before looking at the students' results. Yuan's letter of expulsion was finally ready. Be quiet, students, she said. Test scores and rankings are now out. But before I announce the results, I need to deal with one thing first. Hearing this, all eyes turned in the direction of the last row excitedly. Sure enough, Liang Lihua held a notice out and slapped it on the podium. I presume many of you knew about this matter. Our classmate, Yuan Wan, has violated the school rules and regulations umpteen times. Her behavior is unbearable, irredeemable, and has seriously damaged our Qinghe High School's reputation. The school has come to a decision to expel her. Cheers came from below the podium, especially the girls. Ha ha ha, I told you so. That ugly freak would be chased out of school even before the results are out. Finally, we don't have to see that terrifying face anymore. Liang Lihua looked with disapproval towards Yuan Wan and said impatiently, the effective date is today, so pack your things and get going. In the eyes of all the people reveling at her expulsion, Yuan Wan remained calm and motionless without the slightest intention to leave. She gently curved the corners of her mouth and glanced lazily at the person on the podium. Her mocking eyes and calmness looked almost defiant, which immediately made Liang Lihua burst into a rage. Yuan Wan, what's your problem now? Didn't you want an official written notice from the school? That notice has been served. Everything was done according to the rules. Don't you dare think about saying I have no authority again. Yuan Wan's cold eyes narrowed, and she slowly stood up and said, well, since the teacher's talking about school rules, then I should tell her the school rules too. I seem to remember that there is a clause in the rules that if there is significant contrition shown by the student, it is appropriate to avoid punishment and give the student a chance to be rehabilitated. Liang Lihua laughed coldly. Yes, that's a clause, but so what? How is that relevant to you? Look at how horrendous you look, neither ghost nor human. Does it look like you're the least bit contrite? Yuan Wan frowned and replied with a self-righteous tone, yes, I'm ugly. So what? Is it my fault that I was born this way? Is this what a teacher should be doing, mocking a person's appearance? I think that you should take a look at my results first before talking. What if I end up at the top of the class this time? Liang Lihua was stunned at first and then broke out in laughter. The rest of the students also roared with laughter together. Ha, wow. What did this ugly freak Yuan Wan just say? Top of the class? Who gave her the courage to say such a thing? She's an idiot. If she can top the class, I will eat shit. Haha, I'm afraid you will have to eat shit then, because being first from the back is still being first. Chapter 29. She dared not and could not. In the midst of the laughter, Liang Lihua's expression turned gloomy. Yuan Wan, you don't have to talk so thoughtlessly with me here. It's too late now to be afraid and regretful. Qinghe is an unparalleled school. Everyone who graduated from Qinghe has excelled in life and become the pillars of society. You, scum and pest of society, are the disgrace of Qinghe. If you still have half a sense of shame, take your things and leave now. Stop being so insolent. Or should I get your estranged parents to take you away? When speaking about Yuan Wan's parents, Liang Lihua deliberately exaggerated her tone with her face full of sarcasm and disdain. Hearing estranged, Yuan Wan's pupils contracted. This was the issue that she had been running away from ever since her rebirth. In her past life, she blamed her parents for getting in the way of being with Gu Yuzhe. She kept arguing with them, said insensible words, did countless things to hurt them, and finally even forced them to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to sever relations with her, in order to get rid of the so-called stain on their family, just so Gu Yuzhe could give her a chance. As a matter of fact, in order to hide many truths for her, her parents suffered a lot. After the rebirth, the people she wanted to see most desperately were her parents and brother, but she dared not and could not. Now she had no right to see them. Seeing that Yuan Wan was standing there speechless and motionless, Liang Lihua slammed the table in fury. Yuan Wan, don't test my patience. Yuan Wan broke off from her thoughts, her expression unchanged, and insisted, Teacher, I'm merely making a legitimate request. Liang Lihua took a deep breath, trying to contain her anger. She slammed the stack of exam booklets in her hands. After searching for a long time, she finally managed to find Yuan Wan's name and took her results slip out of the pile. Good. Look at your grades. I see that you're the type of person who will not weep until you see the coffin. The result slip showed every student's result for each subject, including the total marks and the marks for each major question. The last page showed the class ranking and school ranking of this student. The students below were all speechless. Is there something wrong with this ugly girl's brain? Doesn't she have a sense of how she scored? What a disgrace. Get a sense of decency. Ugly people always make more trouble. When Liang Lihua flipped to the first page, it was the math results. From the total scores to the three main sections of the exam, namely, the multiple choice, fill in the blanks, and open-ended questions, they were all a glaring 0 points. Math, 0 points. Yuan, this was the result you insisted I see? Scores worthy of shooting you to the top of the class? Liang Lihua sneered. Ha ha ha, as expected, this ugly girl got 0 again. That was a slap in the face. How do you top the class when you scored 0 for math? You brag too much. First. Nothing wrong with being first from the back, right? Yuan seemed to not hear the mockery around her. She said expressionlessly, there's still language, liberal arts, and English. She remembered that language, English, and especially liberal arts exams were very challenging this time. Much uncommon knowledge was tested which could cause the differences in scores to widen. If she could score well on these three sections, even with a 0 for math, she wouldn't be able to top the school, but she should be able to secure the first place in class. Chapter 30. Class Ranking. Number 1. With a stupid student wasting so much time, Liang Lihua's patience was nearing its limit. She flipped the report card over to the next page. However, in the next second, when she saw the language scores, Liang Lihua was stunned. She muttered in disbelief. Language. 150 points. The students below the podium all looked at each other in confusion after hearing Liang Lihua's words. What did the form teacher say? 150 points what? Did she make a mistake? 0 points compared to 150 points. Which do you think is the mistake? Liang Lihua looked over the sheet repeatedly. The score was absolutely clear. She even tabulated the score again herself, and it was indeed full marks. She thought she had the wrong report card and went to check the cover page, but it was still correct. On the cover was Yuan's name. Liang Lihua furrowed her brows, suspicions high, and continued to flip. When she reached the third page, she was even more surprised. On the third page was the English results. She actually scored a full 150 marks again. How could this be? She taught the English class, and this time, she marked Class A's exams. Nobody in the entirety of Class A attained a full score. Even the highest score was merely 148. But Yuan's transcript states that she actually attained a full score for English. Liang Lihua continued flipping. When she turned to the liberal arts page, Liang Lihua was completely in shock and was speechless. Yuan's scores for liberal arts were History 100 marks, Politics 100 marks, and Geography 100 marks. A full 300 marks. And on the last page, which showed the class position, it stated that Yuan, class ranking, 1. Teacher, you haven't said what my results and ranking are. The girl from the last row spoke up with cold eyes. Liang Lihua grasped the report card tightly, face turning more and more gloomy until finally, she burst into a fury. Yuan, you are really something. How dare you cheat? As if she had expected Liang Lihua's response, Yuan leisurely asked, Why do you think I cheated? Liang Lihua's expression unpleasant. She snapped, You didn't cheat? If you didn't cheat, how could you achieve 150 marks for language? 150 marks for English, 300 marks for liberal arts, or ranked first in class? Hearing everything Liang Lihua said, the whole class was in shock. Damn, what? Full marks for language, English, and liberal arts? And top the class? Yuan? You're joking. How is that possible? She definitely cheated. You said that I cheated. Do you have any proof? Yuan replied. Liang Lihua laughed coldly. Do we still need proof? Yuan, do you think we're all fools? Then may I ask if anyone else scored full marks for these subjects? If I'm the only one, please explain how you know I cheated? Yuan continued her line of questioning. Liang Lihua replied scornfully, You maliciously tampered with the score. With a brain like yours, even if you were allowed to copy, you wouldn't necessarily copy it right. The other students nodded along in agreement. If Yuan sneaked into the staff room to tamper with the score, everything made sense. This ugly girl is so bold. She thinks that tampering with the scores on the transcript would reflect a change in the exam papers as well? What a fool. The truth will come out just by checking her papers. She can tamper with the transcript, but not the exam papers. Chapter 31. Slapped their faces with full marks while the classroom was in heated discussion. The language teacher Feng Rue and happened to walk past with the language papers in hand. Hearing the commotion from the classroom, Feng Rue stopped and walked in. Teacher Liang, what is going on here? What are you raging on about so early in the morning? What else can I do? This student is utterly outrageous. Liang Lihua gestured at Yuan. Yuan, it's you again. Feng Rue and looked at the girl in the corner helplessly. Playing the middleman, he said. Teacher Liang, you don't have to be so angry. This girl is in the wrong, but for kids at this age, dressing up unconventionally is understandable. Seeing that this girl has done well for this exam, you shouldn't be mad anymore. I've just looked through her exam booklet. She got full marks for language. Even the composition. It could almost be a model essay. Upon hearing that, Liang Lihua was suddenly stunned and quickly interrupted Feng Ruean. What? Teacher Feng, you said you just saw Yuan's paper? That's right. Look, this is the one. Feng Rue and eagerly pulled out Yuan's exam booklet from the top. Liang Lihua looked through the paper thoroughly from top to bottom. The answers were perfect and exactly like what Feng Ruean said. It could be a model essay. Liang Lihua's face turned stern, and in a sinking voice, she said, Teacher Feng, we have a big problem now. I'm afraid the exam questions this time were leaked. Feng Ruean was taken aback. His face was horrified. Teacher Liang, you can't say things like this lightly. Our exam questions have always been kept confidential. How could they be leaked? Liang Lihua sniggered and passed Yuan's report card to Feng Ruean. Teacher Feng, you will understand when you see this. Feng Ruean took the report card, quickly looked through, and his face was filled with surprise. Aside from a 0 for math, Yuan scored full marks for all the other subjects and was even first in class. This was unbelievable coming from Yuan, who was always first from the back for every exam. Scoring full marks for language was already unbelievable. At this moment, Feng Rue did not dare draw a conclusion as well. The notice of expulsion has been issued, but she's still causing trouble. With this kind of student continuing in Qinghe, she would only cause a foul atmosphere. Liang Lihua shot a look at Yuan seated in the last row. Yuan, get over here. Follow me to the student affairs office. I'm telling you, it's no longer a matter that can be settled with a light expulsion. She would be in deep trouble for using leaked exam questions. Damn, I can't believe that this ugly girl actually is so talented. She could even get the exam questions. She kept all the exam questions to herself without sharing. She deserved it. This fool, she should have made some mistakes on purpose so her cheating wasn't so obvious. Was she itching for everyone to find out? This ugly girl is in deep trouble this time. In the corner of the last row, next to the window, the boy took away the book that was covering his face. He frowned and glanced at the girl beside him. Up until this point, the girl's expression hadn't changed from beginning to end. That expression of indifference was like taking a leisurely stroll, and she was even looking straight into the eyes of Liang Lihua with a hint of sarcasm. Everybody was saying that Yuan was a fool, and he felt the same way. If she had really gotten the exam questions, she wouldn't have been found out if she'd done it more discreetly. Idiot. Let's see how you're going to clean up this mess. Yuan heard the boy beside her snigger. With eyes brighter than the stars, she glanced at him lazily. Just a retest, at most. Little Missy here will slap their faces with full marks again. Xia was stupefied by the glow from that pair of eyes. When he realized what she said, he was speechless. Chapter 32. You're absolutely delusional. In the student affairs office, All the subject teachers of F class had been alerted and were now gathered to investigate Yuan Wan's exam papers. Many students also gathered outside the door to watch. One of the teachers said, even though the questions on the liberal arts exam were tricky, they were within the scope of the curriculum. They were topics covered beforehand. There are many smart students in Qinghe, and Yuan Wan was not the only one who obtained full marks. But the point is, was Yuan Wan able to produce this result? Also, there is no way to justify the full scores for language, right? Even if her composition was satisfying to the marker, how could she not have at least lost points for reading comprehension? Another teacher brought up her suspicions as well. Language teacher Feng Rue and also expressed his doubts. Yuan Wan, I just looked at your paper carefully and found that your reading comprehension answers matched the answer key exactly, word for word. Could you explain how this happened? I've seen those two questions before and simply memorized the answers. The first question for the reading comprehension came from XX year of Province A's 6 Schools Union Senior Year Examination paper, and the second question came from XX year of the National 13 Schools Senior Year Second Simulation Examination. Yuan Wan answered quickly. Hearing Yuan Wan cite the sources of the two questions, Feng Ruian's eyes glistened. Not bad. The sources of these two questions are indeed correct. Since these two were originally thought to be too difficult, teachers didn't cover them in classes before. However, the topics of these two reading comprehension questions were quite good, so they were chosen for the exam. You, little girl, have you done even these two sets of questions? For reading comprehension, teachers only taught the method to answer questions. They never got students to memorize topics since, after all, they would never pick those exact questions for the entrance exams. In the end, Yuan Wan memorized the answers for reading comprehension. As the teachers discussed amongst themselves, a sleepy man about 30 years old walked in leisurely in his slippers. If the test questions were leaked, why did you score 0 for my math? The head of student affairs looked at the sloppy appearance of this guy, furrowed her brows and said, Teacher Zhao, this is a school. Please be mindful of your appearance. Zhao Xingzhou yawned. I don't have classes in the morning anyway. Although the head of student affairs couldn't stand the sight of him, she didn't say anything further. This Zhao Xingzhou may be untidy, but since the math results of F class were always top in the school, even the principal turned a blind eye to him. Liang Lihua said impatiently, maybe she didn't manage to memorize the math exam answers. Anyway, why would any normal person memorize the reading comprehension answers when they weren't the questions that teachers asked students to complete? Besides, the problem now is that she cheated. There is no running away from this point now. The head of student affairs looked at the girl with a serious expression and interrogated her. Yuan Wan, where did you get the exam questions? Yuan Wan was expressionless. I got them when the exam papers were given out. Liang Lihua raged. Look, everybody, she's still lying. Yuan Wan looked coldly at Liang Lihua. Teacher Liang, if you claim that I cheated, please provide proof. If you have evidence to prove that I received the exam questions beforehand, then I will leave Qinghe immediately. If not, I hope the school will retract the notice of my expulsion. Liang Lihua sneered. You are absolutely delusional. Zhao Xingzhou looked for a chair, planted his butt down and waved his arms. After all this, if you want to determine whether this girl's results are legitimate, why don't we allow her to retake the test? Isn't there a second set of papers? Come on. Let her retake the test now. Retake the test? All the teachers fell silent upon hearing Zhao Xingzhou's words. If they wanted the truth, this was only this way left since Yuan Wan refused to confess. Chapter 33. Let us share rain and dew. I'm not opposed to that. The language teacher nodded, curious to whether Yuan Wan was telling the truth or not. Seeing that, all the other teachers looked at each other and finally agreed. Yuan Wan, because of you, so many people have gathered here and wasted their valuable time. It's not too late to confess now. Don't wait till you've lost all dignity. You have thoroughly embarrassed F class. Liang Lihua said furiously. Yuan Wan laughed. Ms. Liang, you were the one who questioned me and also the one who gathered all the teachers here. Even if everybody's time has been wasted, you're to blame. You, before Liang Lihua opened her mouth to raise hell, Yuan Wan looked at the other teachers and said directly, Teachers, You don't have to go through all this trouble. If we use the spare exam, Ms. Liang might accuse me of cheating again, and I'm afraid that even jumping into the Yellow River wouldn't clear my name. How about every teacher create 5 questions on the spot? There would be a total of 25 questions, and if I make a single mistake, then consider that to mean I cheated. Zhao Xingzhou rubbed his chin. Ah, Ms. Yi, your math is troubling. With language, math, politics, history, and geography, shouldn't it be 30 questions altogether? Yi Wanwan turned glum. Math shouldn't be counted. Zhao Xingzhou raised his brows. Why shouldn't math be included? Yi Wanwan replied, expressionless, because I hate math. Zhao Xingzhou immediately covered his heart, feigning a fatal shot to the heart with his face full of grief. Don't be like that. What's wrong with math? My lessons are the most interesting. Yi Wanwan gave him a blank stare, more like they're the most masochistic. The teachers discussed this for a moment and decided in unison that Yi Wanwan's suggestion was the fairest and would save time as well. The teachers then came up with 5 questions each. Very quickly, 25 questions were printed and split into 5 small tests. Zhao Xingzhou, the math teacher, also persisted and came up with 5 questions, looking at Yi Wanwan eagerly. The head of student affairs glanced at her watch and declared, "You may start now. Is half an hour enough for you?"
Yes.
Yi Wanwan didn't object. She sat down and started answering the questions. The teachers all sat on the sofa nearby and drank tea while waiting. Liang Lihua looked at Yi Wanwan as she buried her head to complete the test. Her face filled with mockery. She wanted to see how long this wretch could pretend for. Yi Wanwan glanced through the questions from top to bottom once and then started writing. To prevent her from making lucky guesses, there were no multiple-choice questions, only fill-in-the-blanks. In less than 10 minutes, she finished all the questions. A number of teachers gathered around and quickly graded her work. The final verdict was a perfect score, except for math, for which she still hadn't attempted a single question. In order to accurately test Yi Wanwan's true capabilities, these questions were as difficult as the simulation exam. But in the end, this girl actually got every single question correct again. After Liang Lihua finished marking the last question from the English test, her expression changed immediately. This is impossible. Yi Wanwan has always been the first from the back. How is it possible that her grades improved so drastically overnight? Yi Wanwan replied, "Can it be because I'm a genius?" The initially depressed Zhao Xingzhou laughed after hearing her reply. This girl probably knew how to do the questions before but deliberately submitted blank exams. Rebellious child. I understand everything now. Now that the truth has been revealed, Qinghe has another student with exceptional results. Isn't this something to celebrate? He then turned towards Yi Wanwan with a face full of hurt. But Yi Wanwan, it hurts me greatly that you hate math so much. Can we come to an agreement to share rain and do in future? Sorry, teacher. Can't do it. Yi Wanwan looked at the head of student affairs and brought up the issue that was concerning her the most. So, in regards to my notice of dismissal? The head of student affairs looked at the provisional test paper, pondered for a long time, and finally said, according to the school rules, with your excellent test results, the decision of dismissal can be postponed while we monitor your behavior for some time. If you prove that you have changed for the better, the decision will be withdrawn. Chapter 34. Goodbye, my ass. How could this be? How could you change a decision that has already been made? Liang Lihua pressed on, with urgency. It had been so tough to get rid of this wretch, and her plan had been foiled just like that? The head of student affairs spoke in a grave tone. Ms. Liang, this is according to the school rules. Furthermore, as you know, the graduation rate is of utmost importance to the school. Yi Wanwan still has a lot of potential, so put in more effort to guide her well. Liang Lihua wasn't satisfied, but now, all the teachers had witnessed Yi Wanwan's exam results were genuine, and she also understood the importance of graduation rates to the school. Damn, she had been 80% sure that she'd be able to chase this wretch away this time. While Yi Wanwan had just ended her retest, the students hiding outside quickly circulated the news to the class. After hearing the news, the whole of Class F was in an uproar. The Yi Wanwan that was always last in class actually topped the class for real? We saw it for ourselves. All the teachers at the scene came up with new questions, and she got them all correct. Also, the decision to expel her is held back at the moment. Damn, how could this happen? I thought that we wouldn't have to see that freak anymore, but now we have to continue to be around this eyesore. She just has slightly better grades. What's the big deal? If she didn't have good grades to make up for such an ugly face, then she might as well be better off dead. Very soon, Liang Lihua returned to class with a gloomy face with Yi Wanwan following behind. The classroom immediately entered a silence, with all eyes trained on Yi Wanwan. After all, it was shocking to have the student who was always ranked last in class to come around and end up top of the class so suddenly. Class monitor, come over and give everybody their results back. After receiving your exams, students, please remember to check carefully for mistakes. Liang Lihua made these casual remarks with a cold face, without mentioning what had just transpired, and without much comment on the students' results this time. Otherwise, she would be doing the equivalent of slapping her own face and praise Yi Wanwan for her drastic improvement, right? Observing Liang Lihua's attitude, everybody knew in an instant that the rumors about Yi Wanwan coming in first in the class were true. Liang Lihua, now, everybody, please rearrange your seats. Hearing that they would have to change their seats, the students started wailing, some happy and others worried. Finally, with a big problem out of the way, Yi Wanwan was in a good mood. She waved goodbye to her seat partner, while slowly packing up her things. Goodbye, classmate Xixia. Congratulations. Finally, you don't have to look at this face of mine anymore. The boy grabbed his result slip tightly in his hand with blue veins on his forehead. Goodbye, my ass. About 10 minutes later, everyone quickly hustled to their new seating arrangements. Then, all eyes stared at the pair of seats in the first row oddly. On the leftmost seat on the first row was Yi Wanwan. To the right of her was Xixia. At this moment, the boy next to Yi Wanwan glanced sideways at the face that had been giving him nightmares for the past few days in a row, and the light in his eyes almost died out. If he had known this would be the result, he'd rather be last in class than number 2. Yi Wanwan looked at him sympathetically. Young man, you have my condolences. You still have a long way to go in life. This small setback is nothing in comparison. Xixia took a deep breath, trying to suppress his raging temper. Shut up. Yi Wanwan finally stopped aggravating him and laid on the desk to sleep. She'd exerted too much energy just now, so her energy needed to be replenished. After everyone had settled into their new seats, Liang Lihua continued. The exams are over, but we have something very important to do next. I believe everybody knows that to initiate the school leader's inspection, the school has organized an arts performance and requires each class to showcase one performance. In the previous class meeting, we had agreed that our class would be staging a play Snow White, and Xixia was chosen to be the prince. However, we hadn't decided who would be the female lead. Snow White. Chapter 35. I really want to chop that arm off. Everyone's eyes glistened when Liang Lihua mentioned the theatrical performance, especially the girls in the class. For this performance, the girls in the class had been having a catfight for quite some time. The reason behind why the female lead was still undecided was because some girls fought too hard over it previously. Many students in the class had families with notable backgrounds, resulting in total chaos. They secretly bought votes, threatened students to vote for them, and even almost caused a fight directly in school. It caused Liang Lihua to be in a terrible position, tossed from side to side. Thus, she'd postponed the decision of female lead until after exams. After much thought, she decided that drawing lots would be the most effective and the girls wouldn't have to fight anymore. So Liang Lihua continued. To be fair and to ensure that every student has an opportunity to participate, I have decided that we will draw lots to decide on the candidate. Nobody is allowed to disagree. Teacher, I agree. Me too. Let's go by drawing lots then. All the students agreed with Liang Lihua's decision. The girls who had lower chances initially would now have an equal opportunity. Since everybody was on equal grounds now, naturally most students would agree to this. Only the few girls who had higher chances glared, especially the class beauty, Cheng Shui, who was always teased by the class to pair up with Xixia. Liang Lihua heaved a sigh of relief with the outcome. She instructed the class monitor to write down the names of every girl in the class on small pieces of paper and then place them into a little box. For this title, let's get Xixia to draw it, Liang Lihua said. Otherwise, if it was drawn by someone else, those girls would be unhappy again. All the girls nodded their heads in total agreement. Wow, the hunk himself is drawing the lot. The person who's chosen must have saved the Milky Way in their previous life. The class monitor carried the box over. Xixia was feeling depressed at the moment and was not in the mood. Under the gaze of many eager students, he casually slipped his hand into the box to draw a lot and tossed it to the class monitor without looking at it. The monitor took that slip of paper and was almost burnt by the glare of the girl's eyes. Oh, the person Xixia has drawn is. The monitor opened the small slip of paper carefully while speaking. Just as he was about to read the name, the monitor stared at the paper and stood rooted to the ground with his eyes big and mouth gaping wide as if he had been struck by lightning. Xixia noticed that the monitor's expression was odd, so he raised his brows and looked over. The expression on the monitor's face gave him a bad feeling. At this moment, the monitor didn't dare look in the eyes of Xixia and was even more afraid to look at the girl's expressions. At everyone's insistence, he then swallowed hard and stammered. The one who was drawn is Yi Wanwan. What did you say? The boy snatched the paper from the monitor. On the paper was Yi Wanwan, 3 words as clear as day. Yi Wanwan woke up to the noise next to her, wiped the saliva off the sides of her mouth, opened her eyes in a daze and looked at her partner. What is it? Xixia looked at the girl's frightening face with hair as messy as Sadako's, the way she drooled in her half-opened eyes. I really want to chop that arm off. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.